Chapter 86. Do you know what will happen to you if you use your sword in front of me? Lin Feng said lightly. Xue Chao was stunned, and then burst into laughter. It seems that you have lost your mind. Who do you think you are? Then he smiled cruelly. It's useless for a waste like you to live in this world. In that case, I'll send you to hell. With that, he controlled the flying sword and chopped it down toward Lin Feng's head. Lin Feng didn't even look at the flying sword above his head. Instead, he looked at Mr. Ma, who was as thin as a bamboo pole, and calmly asked, Foundation Building Realm, are you the highest cultivation here? Mr. Ma frowned slightly. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. After practicing a little wild fox zen, you still dare to talk nonsense at this time? Lin Feng let out a light laugh. Forget it. I still won't do something like bullying the weak. If you use the power of the golden elixir period, I'll be bullying you. Before his voice died away, a dazzling Buddhist light soared into the sky and directly knocked away Xue Chao's flying sword. Under the dumbfounded gazes of Xue Chao and the others, a golden mist of light enveloped the surrounding swamp within a radius of more than 1,000 feet. The original poisonous mist in the swamp disappeared, and the putrid stench was replaced by the fragrance of sandalwood. In the mist of light, the sound of Buddhist chanting could be heard incessantly. It was the 24 Heaven Arhat formation. Amidst the chanting of Buddha's name, 24 golden arhats strode out of the fog. The 24 30-feet-tall arhats formed a forest of giants that surrounded Xue Chao's group of 4 in a circle. Each of the golden arhats revealed the magical power of the foundation building realm. The magical power of 24 arhats combined into one, which was vast and boundless, like the sky and the sea. Being surrounded by such a strong lineup, Xue Chao and the others suddenly felt great pressure. Xue Chao's magic sword of the foundation building realm was imprisoned in the air by the Buddhist light, like a fish in the desert. No matter how it struggled, it couldn't move. How is this possible? Xue Chao and the other 2 were stunned speechless. Mr. Ma's complexion also turned pale. With great difficulty, he opened his mouth and said, Fellow Taoist. No, Senior, please retract your divine ability. There might be some misunderstanding. It was a big misunderstanding. None of them had expected that Lin Feng, who seemed to be only at the peak of qi refining, could display such a horrible magical power. Wasn't it a misunderstanding? Lin Feng's voice came out of the golden Buddhist light, extremely ethereal and vast. Misunderstanding? You made things difficult for my disciple, and even waved your swords and sabers in front of me. The facts are right there. I did not misunderstand at all. Mr. Ma was on the verge of tears. Gritting his teeth, he said, Junior is Ma Wu, a disciple of the Evergreen Mountains Jade Radish Monastery. I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai, and have offended you, Senior. My master is Patriarch Flowervine. Please forgive me for my earlier offense. Of Ma Wu to him, to De Feng as he wanted to Lin Feng. He Xue Feng of Xue to Xue. He Xue he should he were to he enough. Feng of it. He. Senior you. He exhausted all of his strength, but he still couldn't summon his flying sword back. Immediately he became anxious. He took out a talisman from his bosom and struck it towards the golden light arhat. Ma Wu's face turned green, and he wanted to slap this spoiled brat to death. No matter how many helpers are nearby, they can't beat Lin Feng, and will die first. At that time it doesn't matter who comes. The talisman exploded in the Buddhist light, turning into balls of fire, and exploding continuously. Even the golden mist of Buddhist light was blown up. Raging flames soared into the sky, and the tyrannical firepower swept over with a momentum that could burn the sky and boil the sea. The golden arhats also retreated one after another. Under the attack of the raging flames, the bodies formed by the light silhouettes became somewhat unstable, as though they would shatter at any time. Ma Wu's eyes suddenly lit up, and he said, A golden elixir talisman? The talisman Xue Chao threw out was a golden elixir talisman, which was specially refined by a powerful elder in his family for him to protect himself. It was equivalent to the power of a strike from a powerhouse in the golden elixir period. And it was Xue Chao's last trump card. Let's kill our way out. Even if he is a golden elixir yuaning old monster, He will die for sure. Xuechao's expression was ferocious, and his two followers behind him also echoed his words. Seeing that the golden elixir talisman was clearing the way, Ma Wu's mind was also active. He certainly didn't want to bow and scrape if he could. Ma Wu immediately made an incantation gesture with both hands, opened his mouth, and spat out a plant seed. The seed fell into the air, and under the control of Ma Wu's magic power, it quickly germinated and grew into a seedling. The seedling's leaves were clear and green, and it looked very fresh. Circles of green light appeared around the seedling, and it revealed a terrifying magic power fluctuation. Wherever the green light passed, the golden Buddhist light in the 24 Heaven Arhat formation gradually melted. The Buddhist light formation was already a little unstable after being bombarded by the golden elixir talisman, and now Ma Wu's attack made it even more unstable. Seeing this, Ma Wu couldn't help but smile. Fellow cultivator, if you are willing to leave now, we will not pursue what happened before. What do you think? Xuechao snorted. In your dreams. I think this Taoist is just a silver spear. He looks good, but he is useless. He is only pretending to be strong because of this formation that he picked up from God knows where. Once this formation is broken, I will teach him a lesson. Ma Wu didn't care. He let Xuechao play the good cop, and he played the bad cop. Fellow cultivator, if you don't leave now, young Master Xue will not let you go. When that time comes, it will be too late for regrets. In the Buddhist light, Lin Feng chuckled. Who will be too late for regrets? Golden elixir talisman. Hee. So what if you have a golden elixir talisman? Lin Feng laughed. I have said that if you use the power of the golden elixir period, it will be considered as me bullying you. After saying that, the situation in the 24 Heaven Arhat formation suddenly changed. Among the 24 golden arhats, 3 of them suddenly burned with raging flames. The remaining arhats, 7 in a group, surrounded the 3 flame arhats, and continuously supplied their pure Buddhist power to the flame arhats. The 3 flame arhats chanted the name of Buddha in unison, and the flames rose into the sky, connecting into a boundless sea of fire in the air. There was a rumbling sound in the sea of fire, and the entire Buddha light array shook. Xuechao and the others who were in the Qi refinement stage didn't feel it, but Ma Wu, who was in the foundation establishment stage, clearly felt that something terrible was about to be born from the sea of fire. In the next moment, a golden Buddha with 4 faces, 8 arms, and a furious expression slowly rose from the sea of fire. The Buddha had a vertical eye on his forehead. Milky white Akalanatha's wrath shot out from the vertical eye between its eyebrows and fell into the raging fire, caused by the golden elixir talisman. Boom! Although they were both flames, the raging fire created by Xuechao's talisman seemed to have become the fuel of the wrath of Akalanatha. In just a short moment, the red flames were all extinguished, turning into a boundless white sea of fire. The wrath of Akalanatha was so overbearing that even other flames would be burned to ashes by it. Ma Wu watched in despair as the little sapling he had summoned was surrounded by the white sea of fire. He couldn't take it back even if he wanted to, and it was instantly burned to ashes. No. With his natal Dharma artifact destroyed, Ma Wu spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground. In the next moment, he was surrounded by the sea of fire, screaming and turning into a flaming man. Xuechao and the others didn't even have the chance to struggle before they were swallowed by the sea of fire. Why did I provoke such a malefic star? This was the last thought in all of their minds. It was too late for regrets. Wang Lin looked at the scene in front of him, and his eyes were full of vigor. Lin Feng suddenly came to his senses and said, I don't dare to burn them all. I still want to ask them about the galaxy sand. Thinking of this, he quickly withdrew the wrath of Akalanatha and transferred his magic power to the netherworld nirvana art. Among the 4 of them, only Ma Wu, who had the highest cultivation level, was lucky enough to survive, but his body was also burned to ashes, leaving only a remnant of his soul. Before he could rejoice that the fire was finally extinguished, his soul was captured by a magic power. Ma Wu was instantly scared out of his wits. Lin Feng looked at him with a smile and used the netherworld puppet technique. Chapter 87. In the space inside the underworld pearl, Mawu's soul has already completely turned into a translucent dusky yellow, struggling in pain in the surging underworld true water. My master won't let you go. Mawu roared with hatred. Lin Feng chuckled. I know, your Yuanying stage master carved a talisman in your soul. As soon as you die and your soul scatters, he will immediately know. But I won't kill you right now. I wonder if he can know what you're going through right now. Mawu closed his eyes in despair. He never would have thought that he didn't die. But his situation was 10,000 times worse than death. Lin Feng smiled faintly. Now tell me, why did you guys immediately turn hostile and attack when my disciple asked you about the galaxy sand? Mawu swore to the gods that he absolutely didn't want to answer Lin Feng's question, or even answer a wrong answer. However, the Netherworld puppet's magical restriction made him answer every question and speak the truth. The Society of the Strong Gale? Lin Feng was indeed a bit surprised. He didn't think the galaxy sand would have a connection with the Society of the Strong Gale. The Society of the Strong Gale is an anti-Zhou organization, formed by the remnants of Snowgale country, that was destroyed by the Great Zhou dynasty. Among the many forces resisting the rule of the Great Zhou, they were quite active. Half a year ago, in order to take Zhu Yi as his disciple, Lin Feng traveled far away to the capital of the Great Zhou. There he once came into contact with the people of the Society of the Strong Gale. At that time, in order to harm the Marquis of Xuanji, they kidnapped the bastard son of the Marquis of Xuanji, Zhu Yi. This time the Great Zhou dynasty sent an army into the Great Lake of the ancient domain to hunt down a group of cultivators of the Society of the Strong Gale. They once discovered galaxy sand on the bodies of the cultivators of the Society of the Strong Gale. So as soon as Xuechao and the others heard Wang Lin mention galaxy sand, they wanted to capture him first without saying anything. Lin Feng inwardly frowned. In the end, I still don't know the exact whereabouts of the galaxy sand. In the vast Great Lake, where am I supposed to find those members of the Society of the Strong Gale? After handing the underworld pearl back to Wang Lin, Lin Feng casually said, It's best to have a specific target when practicing spells. You can use this kid to practice the underworld finger. But remember, don't kill him. I still have a use for him. Wang Lin nodded, and Ma Wu howled. I won't forgive you even if I become a ghost. Lin Feng couldn't be bothered with him. He waved the black cloud flag and left with Wang Lin. Since the opponent mentioned that the Great Zhou dynasty's army was nearby, the battle just now must have alerted them. Lin Feng naturally wouldn't be stupid enough to stay where he was and wait for the enemy's army to arrive. Although the great swamp was filled with miasma, Lin Feng still tried his best to expand the range of his perception. He wants to find the members of the Society of the Strong Gale. The other side won't easily reveal their whereabouts. Only when they are caught up by the Great Zhou dynasty's pursuers, and a battle ensues, will Lin Feng be able to find out where they are. Lin Feng's wandering lasted for nearly half a month. While searching for the members of the Society of the Strong Gale, Lin Feng himself also didn't give up on searching for the galaxy sand, but he still found nothing. On this day, Lin Feng drove the black cloud flag to fly in the thick miasma. Suddenly he felt a violent wave of mana, not far from him. The momentum was enormous, clearly there were people fighting. Lin Feng hurriedly put away the black cloud flag and landed on the ground, stealthily approaching. As he got closer, light and shadows flickered in the thick mist. A dozen or so figures intertwined together, rising and falling, fighting fiercely. Lin Feng used the stealth technique to hide his body, and also had the system to conceal the mana wave. He quietly approached. Both sides didn't notice that someone had come up to them. The number of people on both sides was not equal. The side with more people had a dozen or so people, surrounding and attacking three opponents together. These dozen or so people were all wearing radiant divine armors. A faint light was emitting from the thick mist, completely isolating the miasma. Even though the cultivation of these people wasn't very high, but they advanced and retreated with great teamwork, displaying strength that surpassed their level. They held the same lightning-long blades in their hands. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled as they swung, displaying astonishing destructive power. The dozen or so people faintly formed a formation, looking out for each other. Their mana also had a tendency to resonate and unite. Combined with their armors and long blades, their battle strength multiplied. This is the Great Zhou Dynasty's divine martial army? Lin Feng looked at these dozen or so people, his eyes narrowing. The divine martial army is the elite force of the Great Zhou Dynasty. Different from normal secular armies, this divine martial army is said to be completely composed of cultivators. The rebels they want to capture must also be cultivators. Different from the Great Qin Dynasty, where the four great families control enormous resources and speaking power, the Great Zhou Dynasty, under the cooperation of the Emperor of Zhouliang Pan and the Marquis of Xuanji Zhuhanggu, the monarch and minister, the imperial power was unprecedentedly concentrated in the Great Zhou Dynasty. It had a bit of the atmosphere of an ancient saint emperor. Most of the cultivators were also concentrated under the control of the imperial power. The rumored divine martial army is an army formed from the elite cultivators of all realms within the Great Zhou Dynasty. To be able to militarize the cultivators who advocate freedom, on one hand it's because the Emperor of Zhou and the Marquis of Xuanji have powerful methods. On the other hand, it's because the imperial family can provide large amounts of cultivation resources for these cultivators. So the cultivators that come from the divine martial army are all extremely powerful, and their realms also rise very quickly. The refining level of the Great Zhou Dynasty has made great progress in the recent years. Batch after batch of powerful magic artifacts were refined and then given to the divine martial army cultivators, arming them to the teeth. Normally speaking, the difference in cultivation is a large realm. For example, a Qi disciple stage cultivator against a foundation establishment stage cultivator. Unless the Qi disciple stage cultivator has a powerful magic artifact or spell to suppress the formation, otherwise it would be very difficult to pose a threat to the foundation establishment stage cultivator. Quantity cannot make up for quality, but the divine martial army, the tacit cooperation, strict discipline, plus powerful equipment, all of this has changed. A foundation establishment stage cultivator alone being surrounded by a group of Qi disciple stage cultivators from the divine martial army is very likely to be surrounded and killed on the spot. Lin Feng carefully observed the three people surrounded by this group of divine martial army cultivators. Right now they are in dire straits, surrounded by danger. The three of them were actually not weak. Of the two of them, one was at Qi disciple level 11 and had a flying sword spinning in the air. His swordsmanship was quite good, and the other was a cultivator at Qi disciple level 12. But under the siege of a group of the divine martial army cultivators, with the highest cultivation level only at Qi disciple level 10, they are slowly losing ground. If it wasn't for the third comrade helping out from time to time, these two would have already been surrounded and killed. More than half of Lin Feng's attention is on the third person. It's just that this person's entire body is covered in raging flames. He can't see her appearance clearly. Lin Feng only knows that this person is a woman who seems to be surrounded by flames, a woman whose body is like a flame. She has a crimson outfit, red riding boots, a red cloak, red hair like a burning flame, and a pair of dancing flames in her eyes. Should only be at the early stage of foundation establishment, but her combat strength is quite strong. Lin Feng evaluated the opponent's strength and found that this woman in red is not to be trifled with. However, although she is fierce, she doesn't dare to fight with all her strength. Instead, she has some misgivings. This is because there is a middle-aged man standing outside the circle of battle. He is wearing the abstruse beast black light armor that only a lieutenant of the divine martial army can wear. The armor flashed with a dark light, and the beast head on the chest looked ferocious. This middle-aged officer has a majestic aura and vast magic power. He is clearly a foundation establishment cultivator, not weaker than the woman in red. Seeing her comrade in danger, the woman in red snorted and raised her arms, raising a black halberd. The halberd flashed with a black light and fused with the flames around the woman, turning into a red and black storm that swept in all directions. A group of divine martial army cultivators stood shoulder to shoulder with a serious expression. More than 10 snow-white lightning sabers slashed out at the same time. More than 10 rolling lightning arcs joined together and turned into a gigantic saber ray that collided with the red and black storm. The faces of the divine martial army cultivators were pale. Even so, Their legs were firmly nailed to the ground, and they were forced to slide back, leaving behind dozens of deep grooves on the ground. The woman in red frowned. The enemy commander hasn't even made a move yet. Just a group of chi condensation cultivators can take her attack head-on. This made her unable to relax no matter what. At this time, the lieutenant suddenly spoke with a thunderous voice. "Yu Hongyan, put down your weapon and surrender. This is your only way to live." The flames around him gradually calmed down. Lin Feng finally saw the true appearance of the woman in red, Yu Hongyan. She was unexpectedly young, only around 15 or 16 years old. Her fiery red hair was unbound and fluttered in the wind like a burning flame. Her red eyebrows were like two thin swords without any gentleness. Instead, she had the heroic spirit of a man with a thick murderous intent. Her jade-like face was flawless. Her nose was much taller than other women, showing her strong will. Her lips that should have been red had only a hint of blood. Yu Hongyan smiled proudly when she heard the middle-aged captain's words, and her red lips parted slightly. Bah! Chapter 88. Yu Hongyan, put down your weapon and surrender. This is your only way to live. Hearing this, Yu Hongyan smirked. The dark halberd swept horizontally, and a red and black storm directly attacked the middle-aged officer. The Shenwu military officer's face darkened. He didn't dodge or resist. He just channeled his mana and poured it into the dark beast armor on his body. The eyes of the ferocious beast head on his chest shone with a black light, as if it had come to life. It let out a low roar. A huge phantom suddenly appeared in front of the Shenwu military officer. That was a berserk beast, roaring angrily and colliding with the storm that Yu Hongyan sent out. The phantom of the beast shattered with a bang, but the red and black storm also dissipated. The Shenwu military officer said sternly, "Anyone who rebels against the association of the strong gale and resists arrest will be killed on the spot." Yu Hongyan glared with his almond eyes. "I'll kill you first." With a forceful stomp, the ground cracked inch by inch. He already charged in front of the Shenwu military officer like lightning. The dark halberd swept up a sky full of flames, stabbing straight at the other's chest. The pupils of Lin Feng, who was hiding on the side and watching the battle, abruptly contracted, his gaze fixed on the dark halberd in Yu Hongyan's hand. The flames and the hurricane gathered together, forming a huge flaming storm that wrapped around the halberd and spun, finally gathering at the tip of the halberd. The storm seemed to sweep away everything in the surrounding space, finally gathering at the tip. Everything finally gathered at this point. A point that can pierce through all things. The Shenwu military officer's expression slightly changed, his body flew backwards. But as soon as he moved, he suddenly felt a huge suction coming from the tip of Yu Hongyan's halberd. The core of the flaming storm. It was as if his entire body was going to be sucked into that point. God-destroying spear? The Shenwu military officer's expression suddenly changed. He took out a jade scroll from his storage bag and crushed it as fast as he could. The jade scroll shattered, turning into one barrier after another, blocking between him and Yu Hongyan. While obstructing Yu Hongyan, the divine martial lieutenant did not take the opportunity to retreat or escape. Instead, he launched a fierce counterattack. With a loud shout, he conjured a dermic art with both of his hands. The dermic power in his body exploded, but it did not attack Yu Hongyan. Instead, it surged into the ground beneath his feet. Lin Feng looked at this scene, a bad premonition rising in his heart. Then, the Shenwu army cultivators who had retreated neatly sheathed their weapons and formed the same hand seal as their superiors. Everyone's magic power surged into the ground. Boom, 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 boom. In an instant, the ground beneath Yu Hongyan's feet cracked and exploded. Like an earthquake, violent lightning bolts soared into the sky. Earthcore thunderquake. Yu Hongyan's eyes narrowed. At this moment, he finally understood why the leader of the Shenwu colonels did not make a move. It turned out that they were preparing such a terrifying Dharma spell. In front of him were layers of barriers created by the other party after he crushed the jade scroll. Under his feet was the exploding ground and violent lightning bolts. Deep in the ambush, Yu Hongyan instantly fell into a fatal situation. Her choice was to shout, "Kill!" Ignoring the exploding ground beneath his feet, Yu Hongyan's halberd exploded with a monstrous flame. His speed increased once again. No dodging, no retreating, no giving way. He just kept moving forward. If there's an obstruction, break it. If there's an ambush, break it. No matter how many layers of defense the enemy in front of her had, no matter how the lightning bolts under her feet kept exploding, Yu Hongyan's halberd did not waver at all. The Xinwu colonel's expression changed. He did not expect this delicate-looking girl to be so ferocious. Caught off guard, he was stabbed by Yu Hongyan's halberd. His entire body was blown away by the violent flame storm. The Xian beast armor on his body was burnt to nothing. Retreat! The Xinwu colonel groaned. If not for the protection of his armor, he would have been stabbed to death by Yu Hongyan's halberd. At this moment he did not dare to hesitate. Under the protection of his subordinates, he quickly retreated. Yu Hongyan did not give chase. Her entire body was covered in red flames, as she resisted the opponent's ferocious attacks. Her cherry lips were no longer red. Her jade-like cheeks were so pale that they were almost transparent. Fresh blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Lin Feng, who had witnessed the entire battle, let out a long sigh. He stared at Yu Hongyan. Other than the girl being ferocious, he could not make any other comment. This girl. She was just like the godly destruction spear that she used. Wherever the spear pointed, there was no chance of survival. She was invincible and killed everyone. Although she had repelled the enemy, Yu Hongyan did not have the strength to fight anymore. It was truly a Pyrrhic victory. Her two companions hurriedly came over to support her. Yu Hongyan regulated her breathing for a while, then said, "Let's go quickly. Dog Zhou's troops will arrive soon." The three hurriedly escaped into the thick miasma mist of the great marsh. They did not notice that a moment later, a person walked out of the thick mist and followed closely behind them. This person is the Xinwu Corps colonel, who was defeated by Yu Hongyan just now. His dark beast light armor had been destroyed, and all that was left of his body was a white robe. His face was pale, and it was obvious that he was seriously injured. However, his expression was extremely calm, and he carefully followed behind Yu Hongyan and the others. Not long after his figure also disappeared, Lin Feng's figure slowly walked out of the thick mist. His expression was uncertain. This person is very scheming. He actually took the risk to feign defeat, in order to find the location of the Society of the Strong Gale's base in the great marsh of the ancient region. If there was a slight mishap just now, he would have really died under Yin Hongyan's spear. I wonder if that Yu Hongyan trio can lead me to the location of the galaxy sand? In the great marsh 100 miles away from Lin Feng and the others, a huge military camp was built on the boundless marsh. In the military camp, numerous armor-clad truth cultivators continuously moved between the tents. The ones with low cultivation level are only at the 3rd or 4th level of Qi disciple. The ones with high cultivation level are at the middle or late stage of foundation establishment. These truth cultivators, no matter how high or low their cultivation level, all have a common characteristic, which is that they all have a soldier-like aura of iron and blood. It doesn't seem to match their identity as truth cultivators, but it has a strange sense of harmony. In the center of the military camp, there is a huge tent erected. Within the tent, the cries of women and children can be heard continuously. A man is lying on the ground facing the sky, his eyes looking at the top of the tent. The anger, hatred, and fear in his eyes have already gradually disappeared, becoming lifeless. The wound on his neck, fresh blood is gurgling out, and even emitting traces of heat. The young wife cried bitterly, tightly hugging her son and covering his eyes with her palms. She doesn't dare to let her son see the tragic sight of his father being killed. However, the little boy seems to have sensed something and kept struggling and crying, tears flowing out from between his mother's fingers. In front of them, a majestic man in heavy armor is leaning against the back of a chair, slowly wiping the blood dripping from his sword. His name is Evil, the commander of the Xinwu army. His surname is Evil, and his given name is Evil. His full name is only one word, Evil. His subordinates all call him General Evil. Looking at the crying mother and son, Evil lightly flicked the tip of his sword and said, "He doesn't want to praise me, what about you?" The young woman tightly hugged the little boy and deeply lowered her head. She doesn't dare to look up, afraid that this murderous demon will see the hatred in her eyes. She isn't afraid of death, but she is afraid that her son will be hurt. Evil lightly waved his sword. Now praise me. The young woman's body trembled, and she silently sobbed without saying a word. Suddenly her arms are empty. In a panic, she looked up and saw a scene that scared her soul out of her body. Her son has fallen into Evil's hands. The little boy is scared out of his wits. Evil indifferently glanced at the young woman. Praise me or he will die. The young woman's body stiffens. This is the demon in front of her, who brought an army to kill her compatriots in Snowgale. He even killed her husband in front of her. And now she has to praise him? How can she do that? But if she doesn't, her son. The little boy stared blankly at his father's corpse on the ground. Finally, he reacted and wailed loudly, waving his hands and struggling. Evil didn't even look at him, and only stared at the young woman. He put his sword on the little boy's neck and calmly said, "Praise me." The sword's cold energy surged, and a bloody mark appeared on the little boy's neck. The young woman shuddered and didn't dare to hesitate any longer. She said with difficulty, "General, you're wise, mighty, and powerful. Please spare my son." As soon as she said that, the young woman's psychological defenses completely collapsed, and words of flattery came out one after another. But her expression was wooden, and her lips moved like a machine. She was like a walking corpse. She just looked at her son with tears in her eyes. Evil closed his eyes and raised his head, as if he was enjoying it. He said, "Go on, don't stop. If you stop, I will kill him." The young woman kept on praising him, but there were times when she ran out of words, so she just kept repeating herself. The long sword on her son's neck brought her a lot of pressure. In the end, her mind went from numb to completely collapsing. She could not speak properly anymore, and she could only look at Evil with a pleading look. Evil frowned and said, "Is there no more?" He calmly looked at the little boy, who had cried until his voice became hoarse. He said, "I hate you kids the most. You make me feel annoyed, and you don't know how to praise me. What's the point of keeping you?" As he spoke, Evil threw the little boy on the ground. The young woman jumped towards her son in surprise. But in the next moment, a big foot came crashing down and crushed the little boy's head in front of her. Ah! Aha! The young woman was stunned, and then she jumped towards her son's corpse like crazy. There was only the skinny body of the little boy that had lost his head, and the ground was covered in blood. Evil's sword turned, and blood flashed on the young woman's neck. She fell to the ground and stared blankly at her son's corpse. After killing these three, my magic power increased again. Not bad, not bad. Evil took a deep breath. A red light flashed on his face, but his expression was extremely calm. This kind of calmness was a bloodthirsty and cruel, that was 10,000 times colder than coldness. Evil picked up a small wooden sword, and felt the spiritual energy and magic power on it. This was what he obtained after killing the husband of the young woman. Those traitors of the Society of the Strong Gale used this kind of magic item to locate the location of the great swamp of the ancient region. Evil walked out of the tent and looked at the Shinwu army soldiers that were waiting for him silently. He said calmly, "Let's go. Our target is the nest of the traitors in the great swamp." Evil suddenly smiled. "We can't even let a traitor go." In the depths of the great swamp of the ancient region, Lin Feng cautiously followed behind Yu Hongyan and the others. Suddenly, he shivered and turned his head to look behind him. What a heavy smell of blood and killing intent. Is it my imagination? Chapter 89. What a heavy smell of blood and murderous intent. Is it my imagination? Lin Feng turned his head to look behind him, but he couldn't sense the existence of anyone or anything. He could only shake his head and give up. But a shadow that he couldn't get rid of was left in his heart, as if some danger was nearby. Withdrawing his consciousness, Lin Feng looked towards Yu Hongyan's group, seeing Yu Hongyan take out a magic item that looked like a small wooden sword. The small wooden sword was activated by Yu Hongyan's mana. It flew into the air and spun a few times, then stopped, the tip of the sword pointing in a direction. Yu Hongyan put away the wooden sword. The group of three headed in the direction the wooden sword pointed. On the way, Lin Feng has already seen this kind of situation more than once. He already understood in his heart that Yu Hongyan and the other cultivators of the Society of the Strong Gale are relying on this magic item to determine the direction in the great swamp of the ancient domain. Lin Feng followed behind them, advancing all the way into the depths of the swamp. After bypassing one dangerous area after another, they entered a sandy area. Stepping on the yellow sand, there was immediately solid ground under their feet. Lin Feng thought, there's actually such a dry sandy area in the great swamp of the ancient domain that's filled with swamps? It's practically like an oasis in the desert. Sandy area, could it be related to the galaxy sand? Lin Feng raised his eyes and gazed over. The sandy area was extremely vast, and it had a circumference of several tens of kilometers. At the center of the sandy area stood a lone mountain, and it looked extremely out of place in the great swamp of ancient domain. Lin Feng silently snuck up the barren mountain. With Yu Hongyan and the others leading the way, they very quickly arrived in front of a cave halfway up the mountain. The location of the cave is extremely well hidden. If it wasn't for following behind Yu Hongyan and the others, it would be very hard for Lin Feng to discover this place. Yu Hongyan and the others arrived in front of the cave. A voice suddenly came from the rocks beside them. Is Hongyan back? A head popped out from the rocks, greeting Yu Hongyan's group with a smile. It's the hidden sentries of the Society of the Strong Gale that were lying in ambush here. Yu Hongyan replied snappily, be vigilant. Don't easily expose your position during the shift. The person on the mountain rock laughed and said, I only spoke when I saw you guys. If it was Dog Zhou, I would have slashed him with my sword. Yu Hongyan and the other two stepped into the cave. Lin Feng was not in a hurry to move. Instead, he hid at the side and waited silently. In front of him, the figure of a middle-aged man is hiding behind the stone wall, avoiding the line of sight of the hidden sentries of the Society of the Strong Gale above the cave, and is currently quietly observing the cave. It's that divine martial officer. After carefully observing for a while, he took out a silver bracelet from his inventory bag, put it on his wrist, and chanted a spell. Lin Feng looked at his wrist and saw that the originally silver-white bracelet suddenly had a circle of black runes, which kept flowing on the bracelet. Black smoke rose from the black runes, wrapping around the divine martial officer's figure. The next moment, the color of the black smoke gradually became faint, until it became transparent. What was hidden along with it was also the figure of the divine martial officer himself. Lin Feng witnessed the entire process of the other party's concealment, so he was not moved by the illusion. His divine sense firmly locked onto the fluctuations of the officer's mana, so he could still accurately capture the other party's position. And so he saw the divine martial officer swagger towards the cave, openly passing under the eyes of the Society of the Strong Gale's hidden sentries, walking into the cave. Lin Feng grinned. This magic item's ability to conceal its tracks is much higher level than Lin Feng's stealth technique. But to pass through here, Lin Feng is far easier than him. The black cloud flag lightly waved, the effect of space travel activated. Lin Feng had already disappeared from where he stood. The next moment he directly appeared inside the cave. Entering the cave, Lin Feng put away the black cloud flag, following the tunnel all the way down. After walking for a short while, avoiding a few more waves of hidden sentries, passing through the end of the tunnel, the scene before Lin Feng's eyes suddenly became clear. The entire mountain peak is almost completely hollow. Inside the mountain peak is a huge cave. At the bottom of the cave, there are houses crisscrossing each other, smoke curling up from the chimneys. Impressively, it looks like a small village. From the distance came the sounds of dogs barking and children playing. Lin Feng even smelled the fragrance of rice wafting into his nose. Lin Feng snuck into the village. He couldn't help but be a bit dumbfounded. A few children in the village ran past. One of them was holding a large rooster in his arms and was constantly flapping about. Behind them, a village woman furiously chased after them holding a broomstick. You stinking brats, you came to steal chickens again. I'll definitely teach you a lesson today. Lin Feng somewhat stared blankly at the scene in front of him. He is 100% sure that these women and children do not have the slightest bit of qi cultivating stage cultivation. They are the most ordinary mortals. As he walked into the village, the more Lin Feng looked, the more he frowned. In a house, A woman with a sickly face lies weakly on the bed, a thin girl chopping firewood and boiling water. After finishing the housework, she hurriedly carries a bowl of medicine to her mother, carefully scoops up a spoonful, and gently blows on it. After blowing on the medicine to cool down, the little girl brings the soup spoon to her mother. Watching her mother drink the medicine, the little girl's face bloomed with a happy smile. In another courtyard, a strong man easily plays with a stone lock. His son, who is only a few years old, also took off his shirt bare his arms, revealing the small ribs on his upper body. The boy let out a childish shout, also lifting up a stone lock, as if presenting a treasure to his father. The man laughed, put down the stone lock, lifted up his son, let him ride on his shoulder, and spun in a circle. The boy rode on his father's shoulder, giggling happily. In a faraway large house came the sound of reading. Lin Feng walked over, and saw that in the courtyard, on rows upon rows of small benches, there were little people sitting upright, their hands behind their backs, reciting poems and books together in a clear voice. A man who looks like a teacher is standing beside them, holding a book in his hand. The teacher reads a sentence. The children will follow and read a sentence. The man's low and gentle voice and the child's crisp and tender voice rose and fell, intersecting and ringing out. In the house, a gentle woman, who seems to be the teacher's wife, is busy next to the stove, looking at the rice pot on top of the fire. Occasionally she would turn her head to look at her husband and the husband's group of students, letting out a soft laugh or two. Lin Feng was silent. These people are probably the remnants of Snow Gale from back then, the family and relatives of those cultivators of the Society of the Strong Gale. In the distance, the Shinwu lieutenant was hidden on the side, also blankly staring at the scene in front of him. His face was gloomy and uncertain, struggling in his heart. General Xia's murderous nature is overwhelming. If he finds this place, he probably won't care that these people are just mortals. He'll still kill them all the same. In the end, Suddenly a wave of mana fluctuation attracted the attention of Lin Feng and the lieutenant. In a large house at the east of the village, on an open space in the courtyard, several dozen teenagers are sitting cross-legged together, practicing qi and adjusting their breathing. In front of them stands a girl completely red. It's Yu Hongyan. Yu Hongyan raised her eyebrows that are as straight as two thin swords, saying, "Dogzhou, a lot of people came this time. In the most dangerous situation, you guys also have to go into battle and kill the enemy. If you don't train hard and increase your strength, how will you protect your family?" The group of teenagers in front of her didn't say anything. All of them focused on training, but it's as if a fire was ignited in everyone's heart. They're united against a common enemy. They're clearly just a group of teenagers who just entered the Qi disciple stage, but under the unity of will they exude an astonishing aura. The Shinwu lieutenant looked at the scene in front of him with a gloomy expression, closing his eyes. Forget it. Then he took out a sound transmission crystal from his storage bag, preparing to crush it. This crystal can allow him to directly communicate with General Xia. Right at the moment he was about to crush the sound transmission crystal, a black light flashed in front of his eyes. For a moment the world spun around him. When the lieutenant came back to his senses, he was already in a dark space. In the darkness, a young Taoist wearing a white robe and a crown of feathers and stars slowly walked out. It's Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked at this Shinwu lieutenant, shaking his head. Even though I don't want to meddle in other people's business, but since I ran into you, I can't just turn a blind eye. Chapter 90. Even though he often screws other people out of their eggs, Lin Feng has always believed that he is still a noble person, a pure person, a moral person, a person who has broken away from vulgar interests, a good person with a kind heart. As a good person, he had to have the most basic compassion and compassion. He didn't know what kind of person the commander of the Shinwu army was, but once the army charged into the mountain, the people in this small village would suffer. Lin Feng waved the black cloud flag and directly took away the officer. The officer's eyes flashed as he looked at the dark space inside the black cloud flag. A spatial magic artifact, and a golden elixir period magic artifact at that? He quickly judged the situation and put away the transmission crystal. Facing the spatial barrier of the black cloud flag, He couldn't contact the outside world, even if he crushed the crystal. Lin Feng was also observing him, and found that he didn't seem annoyed, because he was trapped and couldn't contact others. At this moment, this officer actually had a relaxed expression, as if he was relieved of a heavy burden. Lin Feng's heart moved, asking, "What's your name?" The officer calmly said, "I am Dao Jiqiang, the great Zhou Shenwu Army's front army, the officer of the 1st Brigade of the left camp." Lin Feng nodded. "Who is the commander of the Shenwu Army this time?" Dao Jiqiang didn't answer this time. He just silently looked at Lin Feng. Lin Feng glanced at him. "Apart from your name, I won't be able to get any more military intelligence from you. Is that what you mean?" Dao Jiqiang smiled. "You are an understanding person." Lin Feng shook his head. "Unfortunately, you are not. If I really want to know something, I can directly refine your soul. Do you think you can hide it?" Dao Jiqiang's expression slightly changed as he said, "That will depend on whether you have the ability or not." Lin Feng chuckled. "Loyal duty? I've been observing you for a long time, and I can tell that you actually don't want to pass on the information here to your superiors." Dao Jiqiang fell silent. He lowered his head and said nothing. "Where to go? Think about it yourself." Lin Feng waved his sleeves and directly came out of the black cloud flag. After Lin Feng left, Dao Jiqiang had no intention of resisting. Instead, he sat down and stared blankly at the dark void. Seeing this, Lin Feng had an idea. It seems that the commander of the Shenwu army is very murderous. Even his subordinates are worried that he will slaughter mortals. Although this Dao Jiqiang has a sense of military discipline, he has his own way of thinking. Lin Feng thought, even though the Emperor of Zhou and the Marquis of Xuanji can gather cultivators and train them into an army, it's not a true army after all. Cultivators that seek to be free and unfettered are naturally in conflict with the army. Even if Dao Jiqiang causes trouble, Lin Feng has absolute confidence that he can suppress him with a flip of his hand. So he doesn't take it to heart, and let him fend for himself in the black cloud flag. Lin Feng searched the village for a while, and very quickly found a lone cultivator of the Society of the Strong Gale. Xiao Budian's sneak attack technique right now is already faintly showing signs of surpassing him. But Lin Feng is after all the creator of this secret technique of his sect. He even more deeply understands the 3 key points of speed, accuracy, and ruthlessness. The opponent is only a small Qi disciple stage cultivator. When Lin Feng silently snuck up behind him, he didn't even have the chance to grunt before being knocked down by a rod. The rod hit the back of the opponent's head. Then, without waiting for the opponent's body to soften and fall, Lin Feng already supported his body with incomparable agility and dragged him into a corner where there was no one. Directly opening the opponent's storage bag, some of the scattered items were all thrown to the side. Lin Feng grabbed a small wooden sword and carefully examined it. The craftsmanship of the wooden sword is very exquisite. The wood itself is not outstanding, but on the hilt of the sword there is a small crystal the size of a grain of sand embedded. Even though the size is extremely small, the crystal is overflowing with light, like the resplendent starry sky in the night, shining brightly. Galaxy sand. Lin Feng took a deep breath. The small crystal embedded on this wooden sword is actually the galaxy sand he was looking for. Even though there is only 1 grain of galaxy sand on the wooden sword, Lin Feng already knows that he found the right place. If every cultivator of the Society of the Strong Gale had a wooden sword like this, then just the galaxy sand on these wooden swords would already be a considerable amount. In Lin Feng's heart there was even more of a guess. These wooden sword magic items help the members of the Society of the Strong Gale find their way in the great swamp of the ancient region, letting them walk in the vast swamp shrouded in thick mist and miasma, where spiritual energy is mixed, and it is hard for their divine sense to be effective. It's very likely that they won't be able to find their way clearly. But these wooden swords, from start to finish, all point in one direction. That is this sandy area, this lonely mountain on this sandy area. Then what is the working principle of the wooden sword magic items? Could it be that there was a huge galaxy sand vein buried here, and the galaxy sand produced in this place was embedded in the wooden sword? Then, after it was refined by a secret method, It produced a strange resonance with the vein and guided the direction of the vein. Thinking up to here, Lin Feng no longer hesitated. Activating his mana, he brought up the wooden sword. The wooden sword spun a few times in midair, and then stopped, the tip of the sword pointing in one direction. Lin Feng followed the direction the tip of the sword was pointing in. That is the end of the village, and even more so the back of the mansion, where Yu Hongyan teaches Dao techniques to the youths of the village. After going around the mansion, a pile of rubble was revealed. Huge rocks over 10 meters long were piled up in disorder, like a small mountain. Lin Feng flipped over the huge rocks, and saw that in the middle of the pile of rubble, there was a pitch-black hole on the ground. Entering the pit, Lin Feng's brows immediately furrowed. Inside the hole, the spiritual energy was actually extremely pure. Even Lin Feng, who has stayed in the great swamp of the ancient region for almost a month, was not used to this. But this is definitely not a good thing. The impure spiritual energy suddenly becoming pure. This is not something that can be caused by a simple rare treasure or a spirit stone mine. It can only be that a powerful cultivator made a move, or that someone laid down a powerful formation here. Under the effect of it, only then can the originally impure spiritual energy become pure and orderly. In these two situations, no matter which one it is, for Lin Feng neither is good news. Lin Feng raised his vigilance, following the tunnel all the way down. A moment later, the scene before his eyes suddenly became clear. A faint golden sand dune appeared in front of Lin Feng. Countless grains of sand flickering with a golden brilliance. It was incomparably dazzling. Below the sand dune, a stretch of sandy land was separated by a few streams. Silently the water flowed. The tinkling sound of the water had a strange rhythm. It was refreshing to listen to. But Lin Feng became even more vigilant. These few streams of water seemed to be disorderly, splitting the golden sand into pieces, but they faintly formed a huge talisman. It was this talisman that formed a mysterious formation, causing the spiritual energy in the whole to become pure. Lin Feng looked at the top of the sand dune. There sat a person. It was a young man in white. He looked incomparably weak, his face was pale, and even though he was sitting there, his forehead was constantly dripping with cold sweat. But Lin Feng did not dare to have the slightest thought of looking down on him. Even though the young man in white looked extremely weak, as if he was suffering from a serious illness, but Lin Feng was completely unable to see through the depth of his cultivation. But at the same time, Lin Feng could vaguely feel that the young man in white had a close connection with the golden sand dune below him and the water talisman. To be able to control such a huge formation, naturally, he would not be an ordinary person who had not cultivated before. But Lin Feng could not see through the depth of his cultivation. There was only one possibility. This young man's actual cultivation was far above Lin Feng's. While Lin Feng was thinking, the young man in white suddenly spoke. A cultivator of the great Zhou dynasty? To be able to sneak in here, Yu Hongyan and the rest are getting more and more lazy. With that, the young man in white coughed dryly. The sand under Lin Feng's feet suddenly shook. Chapter 91. You actually managed to sneak in front of me. Yu Hongyan and the rest are getting more and more lazy. The white-clothed youth raised his hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead and coughed repeatedly. However, his seemingly weak body suddenly exploded with a shocking wave of mana, causing the golden sea of sand beneath him to shake violently. Lin Feng was still in the state of using the stealth technique, and with the system concealing his mana cultivation, it was reasonable to say that he would not be easily discovered. I was careless. As soon as the other party opened his mouth to speak, Lin Feng knew that something was wrong and subconsciously looked at the sand beneath his feet. This piece of golden sand clearly had an extremely strong detection ability. Once an outsider invaded, it would immediately sense it and let the white-clothed youth know. Through the sand, the white-clothed youth could not see through the system's concealment and could not sense the strength of the mana in Lin Feng's body. However, he could clearly sense that someone had stepped onto the sand. An outsider had broken in, but he was not able to sense it. This was enough to explain the problem. Therefore, the white-clothed youth immediately took action. The yellow sand that filled the sky rolled up and was about to swallow Lin Feng. Lin Feng frowned slightly and waved the black cloud flag. His entire body was wrapped in a ball of black light. As the black light flickered, it isolated the yellow sand outside. A golden elixir period artifact? However, it's damaged and can't stop me. The white-clothed youth weakly raised his hand and slowly formed a hand seal. From the stream that cut the sand, a water arrow emerged and fused with the yellow sand. Immediately, it turned into a murky yellow stream of water and flew towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng felt bitter in his mouth. The other party had not used his full strength, but he had already revealed the powerful strength of the golden elixir period. That turbid dark yellow stream of water actually easily broke through the protection of the black cloud flag's dark light, pouncing straight towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. The grains of sand are heavy and condensed. 1 grain of sand weighs at least hundreds of kilograms. It's comparable to a boulder, but it's condensed and compressed to the size of a grain of sand. This time there are thousands upon thousands of them. The grains of sand are heavy, but when they are swept up by the water, they blend with the nimbleness of the water. Their trajectories are unpredictable and difficult to avoid. Even if I manage to avoid them, the water will change its direction and catch up to me. This move of the white-robed young man had combined the heaviness of the earth with the nimbleness of the water. It was extremely profound. The defense of the black cloud flag was broken, but Lin Feng did not lose his calm. He still controlled the power of the black cloud flag to conceal his figure, but secretly undid the heaven cage sigil that sealed Tunten. What the hell is this? Tunten let out a strange cry, but could only helplessly block the spear for Lin Feng again. It reverted to its original form, and painstakingly swallowed the dark yellow water. Cough 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 cough. I'm choking to death. Tunten angrily roared. Lin Feng, you bastard, if you let me eat these messy things again, I'll fight you to the death. Oh my, what is this stuff? It's choking me to death. Lin Feng snickered. It's good enough that you have something to eat. At least I'm thinking of changing it up for you. Tunten's curses continued to fill the sky. Lin Feng turned a deaf ear to it, once again using the heaven cage sigil to seal Tunten. Bastard, sooner or later I'll swallow you. Tunten rolled its eyes. The current her clearly had indigestion. Her stomach was in terrible pain. Even without the heaven cage sigil, she wouldn't be able to cause any waves for a while. His own technique was soundlessly dissolved by the opponent. The white-robed young man's eyes flashed. His back that was bent due to the pain slightly straightened up. Seeing this, Lin Feng frowned, rushing to say, "Are you injured?" The white-robed young man coughed dryly twice. "No need for you to worry. If you have any ability, bring it on. Kong Nanhua will receive." Lin Feng put away the black cloud flag, revealing himself. With a wave of his wide sleeves, he turned on his pretentious mode and proudly said, "I never take advantage of people, let alone bully an injured junior like you." The white-robed young man Kong Nanhua raised his head to look at Lin Feng, not saying anything. The current Lin Feng was wearing a wide-sleeved white robe, a feather robe and a star crown. His expression was noble and proud, calm and composed, truly having the appearance of an otherworldly master. He looked at Kong Nanhua, calmly saying, "I have no relationship with the Great Zhou dynasty. You don't need to be so careful. If I really have to say, there is even some friction between me and the Great Zhou dynasty." Kong Nanhua raised his hand to wipe the cold sweat on his forehead, slowly saying, "I'd like to hear the details." Lin Feng said, "I have a disciple, the son of the Great Zhou dynasty's Marquis of Xuanji, Zhu Hongwu." Kong Nanhua was displeased. "I feel like you are making fun of me." Lin Feng's expression was calm. "If you knew that my disciple almost died under his own father's hands, you wouldn't think like this." Kong Nanhua's gaze flashed with a bit of understanding. Xiao He and the others half a year ago tried to kidnap a bastard son of Zhu Hongwu. In the end they failed, and were rescued by the house of the Marquis of Xuanji's Huang San. But afterwards there was news that the bastard son and Huang San disappeared together. "I remember that the bastard son is called Zhu Yi. Could it be that you are referring to him?" Lin Feng smiled indifferently. "A month ago, in the forest of the Great Qin dynasty's southern border, I just killed the second steward under Zhu Hongwu. He seemed to be called Tao Er, right? He wanted to harm my disciple, so I killed him." Kong Nanhua was silent, his gaze flashing. It was unknown what he was calculating. After a long while, Kong Nanhua opened his mouth to ask, "Then why did you come here?" Lin Feng said honestly, "I came here to find a type of mineral called galaxy sand." Kong Nanhua asked, "How much do you need?" Lin Feng was overjoyed in his heart. There really is galaxy sand here. But when Kong Nanhua asked him how much, this question stumped Lin Feng. Who knows how much galaxy sand is needed to repair that broken mirror? After Lin Feng thought for a moment, he asked probingly, 1 cubic meter, do you have it? Hearing this, Kong Nanhua frowned. I can't give you that much. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. This Kong Nanhua just said, I can't give you that much, and not, I don't have that much. That means that he actually has over 1 cubic meter of galaxy sand on hand, but is not willing to give Lin Feng that much. Lin Feng's thoughts flew quickly. He has no enmity with the other party. It really isn't worth fighting to the death. If he can obtain galaxy sand through trade, that would be the best. Just as he was thinking, Lin Feng suddenly felt something move in his bosom. Lin Feng examined it without batting an eyelid, only to discover that the thing that moved was none other than the stone flute that Long Yi gave him that day. Ever since Lin Feng obtained this stone flute half a year ago, he has pondered over it a lot, but in the end he didn't find anything, making him wonder if that which Long Yi was lying to him. Who would have thought that when facing Kong Nanhua today, it would suddenly move? Could it be that this sickly-looking white-clothed youth in front of him is actually related to this stone flute? Lin Feng stealthily took out the stone flute and secretly observed it, only to discover that there is actually a trace of strange mana fluctuations in the stone flute, slightly trembling. That mana fluctuation spread out and came into contact with Kong Nanhua. Kong Nanhua, who was riddled with pain, suddenly became spirited, only feeling that his old injuries that were like maggots in his bones actually soothed a lot. Kong Nanhua looked at Lin Feng in shock. Seeing him like this, Lin Feng was also secretly shocked in his heart. This stone flute can actually heal his injuries? Discovering this, Lin Feng's heart relaxed a lot, but he still didn't dare to be careless. Now that I have this kind of bargaining chip, it will be much easier to bargain with him. But this person is already so powerful while injured. If I let him recover, wouldn't it be even harder to deal with him? Lin Feng thought for a bit and decided to first try to find out more about him, asking seemingly unintentionally, You're also a remnant of Snow Gale? No, that's not the case. Kong Nanhua shook his head. If I really had to say, I can actually be counted as a citizen of the Zhou dynasty. Lin Feng was a bit surprised. Kong Nanhua's gaze revealed an expression of reminiscence. My parents were both citizens of the Zhou dynasty. Before I started cultivating, I also studied poetry and books hard, even passing the imperial exams of the Zhou dynasty. Lin Feng questioned closely. Then why are you now making an enemy of the Zhou army? Did your family die in the hands of the Zhou people? Kong Nanhua shook his head. My parents both passed away painlessly after their lifespans reached the limit. I've succeeded in cultivating, even though I wholeheartedly wanted to extend their lifespans. In the end I didn't succeed. But the two old people both lived to 100 years old. There's nothing to regret. Lin Feng's gaze flashed. You have a lover in this society of the strong Gale? He thought of that girl Yu Hongyan, who is like a raging fire. Putting aside her unyielding and straightforward temper, she really is a little beauty that can bring disaster to a country and bring disaster to the people. An absolute calamity level. Kong Nanhua seemed to know what he was thinking. Hearing what was said, she smiled. You've seen Hongyan? Hee. Even though I don't reject relationships between men and women, but up until now of cultivating, I've never met a member of the opposite sex that moved my heart. Hongyan also counts. Only a ghost would believe you. Lin Feng secretly curled his lips, asking, Then why are you helping the Society of the Strong Gale? Kong Nanhua calmly said, One of the founders of the Society of the Strong Gale, Yu Hongfeng, and I are friends of life and death. Before he died, he entrusted me to look after and protect his compatriots. I promised him. Lin Feng's pupils abruptly shrank, his gaze tightly staring at Kong Nanhua. Even though the white-clothed youth's face was covered in cold sweat from the torment of his injuries, His expression was calm and composed, not having the intention of complaining about the trouble, nor did he have the arrogance of believing himself to be a hero. It was as if he was doing something that was only natural. His voice was so calm, as if fighting against a colossus like the Great Zhou dynasty is similar to an egg hitting a rock, a mantis trying to stop a chariot, something that is normal and reasonable, just like how people eat and sleep. Not to mention Emperor of Zhou Pan, the Marquis of Xuanji Zhu Honggu, these kinds of ambitious and ruthless characters, not to mention the killing machines like the Shenwu army, even the stewards of the Marquis of Xuanji's house, Tao Er and Huang San are all cultivators of the same level as him in the Golden Elixir period. Fighting against a force like this, he could die at any time, but Kong Nanhua seemed to turn a blind eye to all of these dangers. Even if he himself is already riddled with pain, all of this is only because he promised his old friend and made a promise, so he has to keep his promise. No matter how the road ahead is filled with thorns, mountains of knives and seas of fire, the things I promised, I will definitely do it, even if I have to pay with my life. Lin Feng looked at Kong Nanhua. For some reason a sentence suddenly appeared in his mind. A promise made must be kept for a lifetime. Chapter 92. Lin Feng looked at Kong Nanhua, and after a moment of silence he said, I might have a way to treat your injury, but I can't guarantee that it will be completely healed. With that, Lin Feng took out the stone flute. The stone flute emitted a weak fluctuation of magic power. It was pure and gentle, and it was hard to discern its origin. When Kong Nanhua came into contact with this fluctuation of magic power, he immediately felt his body relax, and even his pale complexion became a bit rosier. Is it because of the galaxy sand? Kong Nanhua frowned and said, but this galaxy sand is of great use to me, and I really can't spare a cubic meter for you. Lin Feng was secretly surprised, and he didn't know why Kong Nanhua valued the galaxy sand so much. There is no need to worry about the galaxy sand. Lin Feng shook his head and said, this thing, I want to give it to you, so I will give it to you. There is no need for so many reasons, and you don't need to think too much about it. Just one thing. Today, I used this stone flute to treat your injury. You must not tell anyone about it. Can you do it? When Kong Nanhua heard this, he didn't feel overjoyed, nor did he hesitate. He just thought about it seriously and slowly nodded. I can do it. Every single word of his was spoken very slowly, and his tone was calm, but it carried a weight that was as heavy as 1,000 caddies. Lin Feng smiled slightly. Then it's fine. As he said that, he raised his hand and threw the stone flute to Kong Nanhua. Kong Nanhua was slightly surprised. He didn't think that Lin Feng would give the stone flute to him so easily, or that Lin Feng would be so confident. He caught the stone flute and felt the fluctuation of magic power, faintly resonating with his injury, and it was continuously healing his injury. Kong Nanhua took a deep breath and nodded to Lin Feng. Thank you. He didn't hesitate, and immediately used his magic power to communicate with the stone flute to heal his injury. When Kong Nanhua's magic power entered the stone flute and guided the mysterious power in the stone flute into his body, the originally ordinary stone flute suddenly changed. The gray and unremarkable stone flute suddenly emitted a misty white light, projecting an area of light and shadow in the air above Lin Feng and Luo Binghe. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed as he stared at the projection above his head. As the light and shadow fluctuated, a few scenes flashed by. The majestic mountains were surrounded by white clouds. Sunlight shone down, forming a long staircase at the top of the mountain. The staircase formed by sunlight reached the 9 heavens. In the void in the sky, a cave abode could be vaguely seen, as if it was hidden in an endless overlapping space. Is that an extraterrestrial space similar to the void battlefield? Lin Feng pondered. Could it be the cave abode of some powerful immortal? This stone flute seems to be the key to opening the abode of a mortal's cave. This is probably why Yin Mingyue and Taishi Temple value it so much. Kong Nanhua opened his eyes, which were full of vigor. At this moment, although his face was still pale, at least he was not as weak as before. Sitting on the ground, he was sweating profusely. 10 years ago, I accidentally found this staircase in a mountain. I thought I had encountered an immortal fate, So I wanted to climb the staircase. Kong Nanhua looked at the projection and murmured, "Who would have thought that as soon as I stepped on the staircase, it was as if I was struck by lightning, and I was heavily injured on the spot. If I had not reacted quickly and retreated immediately, I would have died there." When Lin Feng heard this, he immediately frowned. Kong Nanhua was already a cultivator in the Golden Elixir period, but he was heavily injured after taking only one step on the staircase. How powerful was the restriction of this cave abode? What kind of powerful being could open up this cave abode and set up such a terrifying restriction? The stone flute might be related to the cave abode, but with just that stone flute, could he walk on the staircase to heaven? Kong Nanhua slowly said, "Since then, there has always been a mysterious force left in my body. Not only did it torture my body, but it also damaged my soul. Although I was lucky enough to survive, I was seriously injured until today." Lin Feng pondered for a while and asked, "Where is this mountain?" Kong Nanhua shook his head. "I once thought that whoever tied the bell should untie it. I was injured on the staircase to heaven, so maybe I could find a way to heal myself there? Of course, I was also somewhat unwilling, so I returned to the original place to search, but the staircase built by the sunlight had disappeared. After that, I went to look for it many times, but I found nothing. The staircase did not seem to be fixed in a certain place, but drifted in the turbulent space, appearing in different places at random times." Lin Feng knew that Kong Nanhua was speaking the truth. He observed the cave abode that was faintly discernible in the void, and knew that this cave abode was indeed hidden in the void, moving along with the spatial turbulence. Kong Nanhua let out a long sigh, and for the first time since they met he smiled. "Thank you for your help. I originally thought that this thing could only relieve and suppress my injuries, but now it seems that I have hope of recovering. In that case, I don't need this much galaxy sand. Not to mention 1 cubic meter. I can even provide more to you," Kong Nanhua said, his hands forming a seal. His body floated up from the golden sand dune and floated into the air. The golden sand dune under him slowly parted, revealing something buried underground. Lin Feng gazed over. It was as if he saw a starry sky appear before his eyes, countless bright stars twinkling with dazzling light. Under the golden sand dune, there was shockingly a vast amount of galaxy sand buried. Kong Nanhua explained, "Before I had old injuries and was unable to activate the eternal river quicksand formation set up here. I had no choice but to continuously refine this galaxy sand, and then rely on the refined sand to operate the formation. Otherwise I really wouldn't be able to protect the members of the Society of the Strong Gale and their families here. Now that I have your help, I have hope of recovering. There's no harm in giving all the galaxy sand here to you." Lin Feng looked at Kong Nanhua, not saying anything for a long time. From what he means, if it wasn't for the fact that Sure D can completely heal his injuries and make him no longer need to rely on the vast amount of galaxy sand to maintain his strength, he would rather continue to endure the pain and torment of his injuries than make a deal with Lin Feng. Maintaining his strength, protecting those people of the Society of the Strong Gale, keeping his promise to his old friend, in Kong Nanhua's eyes, is far more important than relieving the pain that has suppressed and tortured him for 10 years. Lin Feng was silent for a long time, suddenly asking, "Is it worth it?" Kong Nanhua was dazed for a moment before reacting to the meaning of Lin Feng's question. He smiled calmly. "There's nothing worth it or not worth it. There's also nothing noble or not noble. My nature is like this. I wanted to do this, so I did this. If I really want to care about gains and losses, seeking fortune and avoiding calamity, going against my nature, it will instead give rise to inner demons, detrimental to cultivation. The losses outweigh the gains. From a certain point of view, I can also be considered as having no other choice. Hee. Everyone's path is different. I feel that this is the path that belongs to me, so I kept on walking." Lin Feng nodded his head, not saying anything else. The black light of the black cloud flag rolled up, already scooping up a large handful of galaxy sand. Kong Nanhua also didn't say anything else, closing his eyes and silently channeling his Dao technique, concentrating on communicating with the stone flute and healing his injuries. Within the black cloud flag, Lin Feng first further shattered the galaxy sand, making it as fine as powder. Then he carefully filled in the damaged area of the copper mirror with this powder, then injected his mana into it. Even though the copper mirror's damage was severe, injuring its foundation wasn't weak. It still contained a bit of spiritual energy. This spiritual energy was nourished by Lin Feng's mana, immediately becoming lively. However, contrary to Lin Feng's expectations, after being stimulated by him, the copper mirror suddenly seemed to come to life, producing a strange suction force, greedily devouring Lin Feng's mana. Chapter 93. Together with the remaining 700 exchange points, Lin Feng, who had completed the side mission of the Universe Mirror, had a total of 1,200 exchange points. Without wasting any time, Lin Feng entered the exchange system and immediately exchanged for the Heavenly Wind scripture. Looking at the main mission, the black hole representing wind in the self-created Taoist method system also lit up. Lin Feng smiled. There is still one more. After exiting the system, he found that it had taken him a lot of time to repair the universe mirror. With the help of the stone flute, Kong Nanhua had also reached the final stage of healing his injuries. His face no longer had the slightest sickly look, and his whole body was in high spirits. Powerful waves of magical power spread out in circles, and the golden sand and flowing water kept circling around him. After a long time, Kong Nanhua opened his eyes, and the waves of magical power around him gradually subsided. Looking at Lin Feng, he smiled. Thanks to you, I can heal my injuries. He opened his palm, and the stone flute, which had returned to its ordinary appearance, was supported by magical power and handed to Lin Feng through the air. Both Lin Feng and Kong Nanhua clearly knew the extraordinariness of the stone flute, but Kong Nanhua was not greedy. As soon as his injuries were healed, he returned it to Lin Feng without any reluctance. Lin Feng took the stone flute, shook his head and said, "You don't have to be so polite. But this place is actually not safe. Since I can find this place, Zhou Jun will find this place sooner or later. If you really want to keep your promise to your old friend, you'd better find a way out as soon as possible, and leave with the survivors of the Snowgale country as soon as possible." Kong Nanhua replied, "To tell you the truth, I also have this intention. Before, I stayed here and didn't leave mainly because I was injured, and had to use the geographical conditions here to lay a formation to protect them. Now that my strength has recovered, although I dare not boast that I can protect them completely, at least there is a lot more room for maneuver, and I don't have to defend this place to death." Lin Feng nodded. "Since you have already made arrangements, I won't talk much nonsense. You and I will say goodbye here. If we are fated to meet in the future, maybe there will be a day where we can sit and talk." Kong Nanhua smiled and said, "Thank you for your auspicious words. I look forward to that day." "Me too." Lin Feng laughed and waved the black cloud flag. His body turned into a black light and flew out. Lin Feng flew out of the hole and concealed his figure so as to not alarm anyone. He used the black cloud flag's spatial shifting ability to leave the lonely sandy mountain and once again entered the swamp area of the ancient domain marsh. Lin Feng's heart suddenly stirred. He saw that in the space inside the black cloud flag, the divine martial lieutenant Dao Jiqiang that he had captured once again took out the sound transmission crystal. However, Dao Jiqiang did not crush the sound transmission crystal to contact the outside world. Instead, he stared blankly at the sound transmission crystal in his palm. After a while, Dao Jiqiang's eyes focused again, as if he had made up his mind about something. He threw the voice transmission crystal away. The voice transmission crystal disappeared into the surging black light of the black cloud flag. Lin Feng could obviously get it, but Dao Jiqiang definitely couldn't get it back. After throwing away the voice transmission crystal, Dao Jiqiang felt as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. His entire spirit and appearance became different. He was no longer depressed and was in high spirits. Lin Feng appeared and faintly asked, "Have you thought it through? If I remember correctly, your actions just now were equivalent to betraying the divine martial army." Dao Jiqiang calmly nodded his head and said, "That's right. But just like what Kong Nanhua said, this is my nature and cannot be violated. I think this is the right thing to do, so I did it. At this point, his expression became a bit gloomy. If it wasn't for the fact that the leader this time was General Xie, I definitely wouldn't have done this. However, if General Xie found this place, everyone, regardless of whether they are cultivators or mortals, would not be able to escape death. This is something I don't want to see. Lin Feng faintly said, how you decide is up to you. Just don't regret it in the future. His consciousness retreated from the black cloud flag, and then he took out the universe mirror from his storage bag. Just now, he felt that the universe mirror was a bit strange. Lin Feng's magic power poured into the universe mirror. The surface of the mirror immediately lit up with a faint light. The surface of the mirror became no longer clear, and became like a muddy water surface. A small bright yellow dot appeared in the center of the khaki mirror, and around the bright yellow dot, there was a dense circle of red dots. What does this represent? Lin Feng's pupils suddenly constricted, a bad premonition rising in his heart. The bright yellow light spot is in the center of the mirror. This position should be my current position, or the position of the mirror of heaven and earth right now. Lin Feng slightly furrowed his brows. Then what should these red light spots represent? There are big and small red dots. The big ones are few, only a few dozen, while the smaller red dots number at least several thousand. Lin Feng gazed into the distance, expanding his sensory ability to the limit. He saw that in the thick miasma of the great marsh, there were actually countless figures flashing about. Faintly discernible, they were surrounding the sandy land and lonely mountain under Lin Feng's feet from all directions. Lin Feng's heart instantly sunk to the bottom. He already knew the identity of the people who came. The Great Zhou dynasty, the Xinwu army. The red specks of light on the mirror of heaven and earth reflected the existence of these people. The larger ones represented foundation establishment cultivators, while the smaller ones represented aura refining cultivators. The Xinwu army has already discovered the lonely mountain, where the people of the Society of the Strong Gale are hiding, so the main force came to surround and annihilate them. Lin Feng fished out Dao Jiqiang from the black cloud flag. After Dao Jiqiang saw the scene in front of him, he was extremely shocked. I clearly didn't. I know you didn't. Lin Feng directly interrupted his words. Dao Jiqiang was in the space inside the black cloud flag. His every move was under Lin Feng's surveillance. Lin Feng naturally didn't do anything behind the scenes. Lin Feng looked at the battle formation in the distance, the Xinwu army that had already charged out of the thick mist. He asked Dao Jiqiang. I called you out to ask you, how is the combat power of this Xinwu army? Who is the leader? Dao Jiqiang hesitated for a moment, but still answered. This is the left camp of the vanguard of the Xinwu army. The vanguard is the vanguard of the entire Xinwu army. They are the first to attack in every battle. They are the vanguard of the Xinwu army. The left camp that I'm in is only the flank of the vanguard, so it isn't as strong as the vanguard. The vanguard is the vanguard of the Xinwu army, and the vanguard is the vanguard of the vanguard. All the soldiers of the vanguard are the best at fighting and have the most combat experience. Their average cultivation is also one level higher than the other camps. At this point, Dao Jiqiang's expression slightly changed. But that is in the past. Not long ago, the commander of the left camp was punished and demoted. The higher-ups transferred the commander of the vanguard to our left camp. Lin Feng's expression didn't change. The General Xie you mentioned? His surname is Xie. What is his name? Dao Jiqiang forcefully shook his head. It's not his surname. His full name only has one word, Xie. Before joining the Xinwu army, he was a vagrant cultivator. Rumor has it that he was the descendant of the slaughtering god Gate, that was once extremely ferocious in the ancient era, but has now been annihilated. Rumor has it that General Xie entered the Dao through killing, and is bloodthirsty. I have never seen someone as cold and bloodthirsty as him. Anyone he doesn't like will be killed by him. Not to mention cultivators, even mortals, women and children have died in his hands. Slowly, Dao Jiqiang's expression was ashen. In the past, General Xie massacred hundreds of mortal cities when he attacked other countries. Although his cultivation is only at the golden elixir period, his notoriety is great, and he is known as the #1 butcher of the Shinwu army. Lin Feng took a deep breath and wanted to ask more questions, but a shocking murderous intent suddenly erupted from the Shinwu army. You dare to spy on our formation with a broken golden elixir period artifact? Die, you cowardly scoundrel! Before he finished speaking, a black sword aura flew out of the void and pierced towards Lin Feng in the sky. The sword aura was as black as ink and contained a terrifying aura of endless slaughter, death, and destruction. It condensed the murderous intent of countless dead souls. The door-sized sword aura wanted to tear the sky apart. Lin Feng wanted to control the black cloud flag to teleport, but found that the surrounding space seemed to have been locked. The flag was actually useless. In shock, Lin Feng looked towards the Shinwu army's formation and saw that the magic power of the 3,000 Shinwu army cultivators seemed to be connected into one, vast and endless. The majestic magical power condensed together, and the qi rushed into the sky. It actually completely locked the space around the desert and the lonely mountain. Even the poisonous miasma in the great swamp of the ancient region had to retreat. The area where the Shinwu army was located was directly cleared out. The black cloud flag couldn't be used while that murderous and bloodthirsty black sword aura was already right in front of Lin Feng. Chapter 94. The sword aura was as black as ink and contained endless murderous intent and death. Facing this sword, Lin Feng felt like he was facing a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. He looked in the direction of the sword aura and saw a middle-aged man in heavy armor standing silently at the front of the Shinwu army's formation. He seemed to be the sharpest and most murderous point on the tip of the sword. He exuded an unparalleled power. Evil. Lin Feng frowned slightly. In a split second, the 24 Heaven Arhat formation had been set up. The Buddhist aura and Sanskrit chants filled the air and protected Lin Feng in the middle. Without hesitation, the 3 flame arhats rose above his head and revealed the Akalanatha Dharma body in the boundless sea of fire. It shot out a beam of Akalanatha's wrath and intercepted the black sword aura midway. The milky white flame seemed weak, but it was indestructible. It instantly burned the black sword aura to ashes. Although the sword aura disappeared, the thick murderous intent and death lingered for a long time. It turned into rolling black smoke and circled in front of Lin Feng. Evil, who was at the front of the army, didn't move. He only raised his brows slightly. Wrath of Akalanatha? Saraira? Damn Baldi from the Tempest Temple? He asked 3 times, but he didn't need Lin Feng to answer. A smile suddenly appeared on Evil's face. You still have to die. With that, Evil suddenly took a step forward and disappeared in the next second. The highest level of alarm sounded in Lin Feng's mind. His hair stood on end. Behind him, a pitch-black sword aura as thin as wheat noiselessly tunneled into the light of Buddha formation, moving unimpeded in the golden mist of light like a swimming fish, rapidly stabbing towards Lin Feng's back. Although the sword light was small, like the tip of a needle, as long as this sword hit, it could instantly annihilate Lin Feng from his body to his soul, leaving him no chance of survival. Although the Buddhist light could not block the sword light, it immediately let Lin Feng know that someone was sneaking up on him from behind. Lin Feng wanted to use the Cloud Dragon escape to dodge, but he had a feeling that no matter how he dodged, that needle-like pitch-black sword light would follow him closely. It was like a maggot attached to the bone, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake it off. Under this sword strike, there was no way out, and all paths of survival were sealed off. One could only wait helplessly for death and receive the sword strike calmly. The sword technique Great Tao Mystique passed down from the ancient killing god sect, the heaven-defying absolute sword. Between heaven and earth, there was always a chance of survival. It was said that in the 49 Dayan numbers, missing one would give life. However, the killing god sect's sword technique forcefully defied the heavens, exterminating all life and cutting off all hope. It was a sword of absolute killing, hence its name, the heaven-defying absolute sword. Lin Feng frowned tightly. Although he was shocked, he did not panic. In the sea of fire above his head, the unmovable Wisdom King's Dharmakaya shouted, "My Buddha is merciful, and also transforms into anger and anger. Unleash endless anger, destroy all demons and burn everything." Following this shout, the milky white unmovable Wisdom King's fury shot out from the vertical eye between the Wisdom King's brows. It turned into a hazy rain of fire and enveloped Lin Feng's entire body. Lin Feng's body suddenly stopped. The pitch-black sword light had already caught up and was about to stab at his back. However, it was blocked by the unmovable Wisdom King's fury around Lin Feng's body. Lin Feng snorted coldly. "I've caught you this time." The unmovable Wisdom King's fury that originally covered his body like a shield quickly gathered at his back. It used all its strength to face evil's heaven-defying absolute sword. After the pitch-black sword light came into contact with the milky white flame, it suddenly exploded. It turned into a rainstorm like black sword light and stabbed towards Lin Feng. The boundless sword chi ocean seemed like it was going to drown Lin Feng and then completely tear him apart. The unmovable Wisdom King's fury king blocked the opponent's attack. However, Lin Feng's heart could not relax. Instead, the sense of danger was getting stronger and stronger. Evil's figure slowly rose up from the boundless sword chi ocean. He walked towards Lin Feng step by step. His monstrous killing intent almost froze Lin Feng. "So you're just a little ant at the chi cultivating stage. Luckily, you got a Buddhist Saraira and refined it into a magical weapon." Evil's expression was calm as he said, "All right, now praise me. Otherwise, I'm going to kill you." Lin Feng's eyebrows twitched. "Praise you? Is there something wrong with your brain?" "Of course not." Evil said very seriously. "I'm cultivating the ancient killing path. Only by killing can I improve my cultivation. Therefore I keep killing people. I've killed too many people. In the end I've become numb, confused and tired of it. Only after killing people and being praised by others, I feel that killing has a new meaning. So now praise me." Lin Feng grinned. "So you really are sick in the brain. It's my fault for being so calculative with you." Evil shook his head. "You don't want to? Then you can die now." Before he finished speaking, Evil's long sword finally came out of its sheath and stabbed towards Lin Feng. The boundless sword chi and the black sword light in the air all disappeared at this moment. They all gathered on Evil's sword and stabbed towards Lin Feng's forehead. In front of Lin Feng's eyes, the small sword tip filled his entire field of vision. It became almost infinitely big. At this moment, the rice grain-sized sword tip was the whole world. There was nothing left except for this sword. There was no way to retreat, no place to escape. Lin Feng laughed. Fury of the Akalanatha was originally an attack-type divine art. It was a waste to use it for defense. Facing Evil's sword, Lin Feng didn't even defend himself. All the fury of the Akalanatha attacked Evil. Evil ignored this, thrusting his sword straight at the center of Lin Feng's brows. Even if he was killed by the fury of the Akalanatha, he still wanted to kill Lin Feng first. The path of absolute killing, only attacking and not defending. It didn't leave a way out for the enemy. It also didn't leave a way out for oneself. It was either you die or I die. This was the heaven-defying ultimate sword. It went against the heaven and cut off all life. Lin Feng's expression finally changed. He could clearly tell that compared to his fury of the Akalanatha, Evil's sword was faster. If the two fought to the death, the result would be that he would be pierced by this heaven-defying ultimate sword. At the critical moment, Lin Feng became even calmer. His mind communicated with the 24 Heaven Arhat formation. At the same time, his mana instantly changed from the art of Akalanatha to the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Those 24 Sarairas that form the formation are all the remains and spirit bones of the Great Thunder Temple's Buddhist monks. 3 of these Buddhist powerhouses cultivated the art of Akala, and so Lin Feng used these 3 Sarairas as the core to unleash the fury of the Akala king. Now, under the guidance of Lin Feng's Ksitigarbha Sutra, one of the 24 Arhat silhouettes had a reaction. The other 23 Arhat silhouettes chanted the name of Buddha at the same time. They all turned into golden Buddha light and rushed towards that Arhat silhouette. They merged into his body. This golden Arhat's body shone brightly. The light was not dazzling. Instead, it was dark yellow and heavy like the earth. The appearance of the golden Arhat slowly changed. It turned into a bodhisattva holding a pearl in his left hand and a staff in his right hand. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. As long as hell is not empty, I vow not to become a Buddha. Only when all living beings are saved can I attain Bodhi. The distant Buddhist voice seemed to come from the heavens. It also seemed to come from hell. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and Lin Feng's body combined into one. They turned into a golden body, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, just as Lin Feng formed his Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. He saw Evil's sword tip was only 3 inches away from his forehead. Its killing intent soared to the heavens. The cold air of the sword froze Lin Feng's entire body. He was unable to move. The situation was extremely dangerous. Clang! A crisp sound. Evil's sword had already touched Lin Feng's forehead. However, it was unable to pierce through. It was forcefully blocked by Lin Feng's Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Even though Lin Feng's forehead was in pain, and the powerful force almost made his mind a mess, facing Evil's killing blow, Lin Feng used his Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva to block it. The entire process happened in a split second. Evil One's sword did not complete. His body completely turned into a phantom, surrounding Lin Feng's body. In an instant it was thousands of stabs. All of Lin Feng's vital points were all stabbed once. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was a famous defensive magical art from the Lane Temple. It withstood the test and didn't break through Evil's sword. Other than the Akalanatha flame, there's still the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva? Evil frowned, and suddenly withdrew his sword. His figure flashed and landed in front of the army. Lin Feng didn't relax. Instead, he became more vigilant. This bloodthirsty madman before him wouldn't retreat in the face of difficulties. Abnormal actions often meant more violent attacks. Evil, who landed in front of the army, raised his sword and fused with the 3,000 cultivators of the Xinwu army. His murderous intent soared to the sky and almost swept the entire world. Seeing this, some information about the Xinwu army suddenly flashed through Lin Feng's mind. Not good, it's the Xinwu Immortal Execution Formation. Chapter 95. The Divine Martial Immortal Exterminating Formation is rumored to have been created by the Marquis of Xuanji Zhuhongwu. It is a compulsory course for the Great Zhou Dynasty's Divine Martial Army cultivators. It gathers the mana of many low-level cultivators in one place and instills it into the body of the commander, causing the commander's strength to obtain a qualitative leap. The method was similar to the method of nurturing Dao soldiers in some sections. Using a specific formation, many disciples who cultivated the same Dao technique would be connected into one. As long as there were enough disciples with low cultivations, they would be able to defend against enemies whose cultivations were much higher than theirs, but were few in number. And after going through the Marquis of Xuanji's improvements, the Divine Martial Immortal Extermination Formation became even more overbearing and profound. It could actually link the mana of cultivators who practice different Dao techniques into one and form a formation. The Divine Martial Immortal Extermination Formation was the trump card of the Great Zhou Dynasty. It required at least 100 people to form the formation. At most, it could combine the tens of thousands of cultivators of the Divine Martial Army into one. In the battle of vanquishing Buddhism in the past, the entire Divine Martial Army, of tens of thousands of cultivators, formed the most powerful Divine Martial Immortal Extermination Formation in history. After fighting for several days and nights, they forcefully blew open the Great Lane Temple's protective formation, the Vairocana Formation. If not for that, the number of allied cultivators who died in front of Mahavairocana would at least double. Naturally, it was impossible for Evil to have tens of thousands of cultivators forming a formation to provide him with magic power. However, there were 3,000 of them. That was enough to raise Evil's power to an unimaginable level. 3,000 cultivators, even if all of them were at the Qi condensation stage, was a powerful force in itself. Now, everyone's magic power was concentrated together, and there were even dozens of Foundation establishment cultivators coordinating and directing them. Therefore, when Lin Feng saw Evil setting up the Divine Martial Immortal Exterminating Array, he didn't hesitate at all and jumped back without turning his head. Nonsense. If 3,000 people lined up and each of them gave him a punch, he would still be flattened even after healing. Not to mention, the power of 3,000 people was concentrated in one attack. And there was even Evil, a cultivator of the golden elixir period leading the attack. Only an idiot would fight him. You lunatic! You can't do anything to me in a one-on-one fight. So you bring your brothers to beat me up. Lin Feng was extremely annoyed. If you want to beat me up, then beat me up. But you brought 3,000 people to beat me up. Can you be any more shameless? What made Lin Feng even more worried was that the Divine Martial Immortal Extermination Array had actually locked the nearby space. He had no way to use the Black Cloud Flag's space-time shifting ability to leave this place. This time, he was blocked by the other party in a dead end. Seeing Lin Feng turn into a streak of black light and escape, Evil was not in a hurry. Slowly pointing the tip of his sword at the lonely mountain where the Society of the Strong Gale is entrenched, he chuckled. None of them can escape. All of them will die. With the direction of his sword, the endless murderous aura gathered. The thick fog and miasma over Lonely Mountain had dissipated completely, revealing the gloomy sky. The clouds were so dense that people could not breathe. The commotion created by the Divine Martial Immortal Punishment Formation naturally also alarmed the members of the Society of the Strong Gale on the Lonely Mountain. Facing the Zhou army that had arrived at the city gates, everyone's heart was heavy. Riding on the Black Cloud Flag, Lin Feng flew back to Lonely Mountain and silently hid inside. Why did you come back? Dao Jiqiang asked out of the blue. In the battle with Evil before, Lin Feng used the Black Cloud Flag to cut off Dao Jiqiang and Wang Lin's perception of the outside world. So they did not know what happened just now. Hearing Dao Jiqiang ask, Lin Feng naturally could not tell him that if it wasn't for me running fast, I would have been locked on by the Divine Martial Immortal Punishment Formation. At that time I wouldn't be able to run even if I wanted to. I could only obediently wait for death. On the contrary, it was at this time that Lin Feng appeared more and more at ease. Why didn't you send back the information about this place to Evil before? The reason I came back is the same as you. Dao Jiqiang nodded his head, then said worriedly, the entire 3,000 people of the left camp of the front line are all here, setting up the Divine Martial Immortal Punishment Formation, and it's also controlled by General Evil. Even facing a Yuanying stage cultivator, they can fight. In his heart, Lin Feng deeply felt the same, but on the surface he only smiled faintly, appearing profound and unfathomable. Fuck. Even if all 24 relics are fed to the war god puppet, I'm afraid it still won't work. The other side isn't using a simple human wave tactic. It's a true quantitative change, causing a qualitative change. As Lin Feng pondered, he entered into the interior of the mountain, avoiding the hurrying cultivators of the Society of the Strong Gale, passing straight through the village towards where Kong Nanhua was underground. He remembered that Kong Nanhua said that he set up some eternal river quicksand formation here. Even though he doesn't know the specific power, but from Kong Nanhua's tone it's definitely a large-scale high-level formation. Lin Feng entered the hole, only to see that there were already several people standing inside. Hearing the noise they all turned their heads around. The person at the front has a dainty appearance, dressed in red, crimson hair like fire, two thin eyebrows like two swords that want to kill. Staring at Lin Feng with a pair of almond eyes, it's Yu Hongyan. Lin Feng's gaze flashed. Beside Yu Hongyan is a black-clothed burly man with a long scar on his face. He's also an old acquaintance. It's the Foundation Establishment Stage Cultivator of the Society of the Strong Gale, who kidnapped Zhu Yi in Tianjing City that day. Seeing Lin Feng, the black-clothed burly man instantly frowned. Even the scar on his face throbbed. What the hell are the people outside doing? Yu Hongyan snorted lowly. Don't talk nonsense, take him down first. While speaking, the 6-meter-long dark halberd was already raised in his hand. Kong Nanhua said at this time, Hongyan, Xiaohe, both of you stop. Yu Hongyan didn't even turn his head. His gaze was still fixed on Lin Feng, calling out. Mr. Kong. Kong Nanhua said. This Taoist has no ill intentions. It's all thanks to him that I was able to recover from my injuries. Yu Hongyan and the rest of the cultivators of the Society of the Strong Gale were all stunned hearing this. Their gazes looking back and forth between Lin Feng and Kong Nanhua in surprise. That black-clothed burly man couldn't help but say, Is it the Xinwu army outside? Maybe a wooden sword fell into the hands of the Zhou army. Kong Nanhua sighed lowly, then looked at Lin Feng. If he wanted to harm you guys, why would he help me recover? Not to mention, his strength is only higher than mine, you guys aren't his match. You're already clear about the situation outside? Lin Feng coughed dryly. If he doesn't use the war god puppet, he doesn't have the confidence to defeat Kong Nanhua. Kong Nanhua nodded his head, his expression solemn. The Golden Elixir period cultivators are leading a team. A total of 3,000 people. They've already set up the Shinwu Immortal Punishment Formation. He turned his head to look at Yu Hongyan and the rest. The Shinwu Immortal Punishment Formation has sealed off the nearby domain space. We can't get out. We can only fight. After defeating the enemy, we can make plans to retreat from this place. Yu Hongyan and the rest of the cultivators of the Society of the Strong Gale all nodded their heads with a solemn expression. Yu Hongyan turned around and gave a few orders to the leaders of the Society of the Strong Gale behind him. These people all nodded their heads in compliance, exiting the tunnel together. They have to go arrange for the mortals and relatives in the village to take refuge, and command the members of the society, who have the ability to fight to prepare for the final resistance. Yu Hongyan looked at Lin Feng, a pair of crimson-red eyebrows raised. Why did you come back? Could it be that you also can't do anything to the Shinwu army outside, and want to rely on Mr. Kang's Eternal River Quicksand Formation for shelter? Lin Feng thought, beauty, you're right, but he naturally won't admit it on the surface. He also didn't say anything, only lightly smiled and then turned his face away, an expression of disdain to answer Yu Hongyan's question. Yu Hongyan faintly frowned. The remaining cultivators of the Society of the Strong Gale also revealed a dissatisfied expression. The black-clothed man blocked in front of them, saying in a low voice, "Everything will be handled by Mr. Kong." Yu Hongyan turned his head and glanced at Kong Nanhua, nodding his head and not saying anything. At this moment, Evil's voice came from outside the mountain, calm and cold. It's like a nest of ants hiding in an ant's nest. Just looking at it makes one feel uncomfortable. All of you go die. A bloody and berserk mana wave shook up. This is precisely Evil's unique slaughter Dao concept. But compared to when he fought Lin Feng one-on-one before, it was countless times stronger. Outside of Lonely Mountain, the 3,000 Shinwu army formed into a battle formation, aggressively standing on the sandy ground in front of Lonely Mountain. Almost endless mana was poured into Evil's body at the front of the formation. Murderous intent filled the sky. This Shinwu Immortal Slaying Formation is like a peerless, ominous sword, slowly unsheathing, wanting to slaughter all life and dye the world with blood. And Evil is the sharpest tip of this ominous sword. He pointed his sword at the sky. The dark clouds in the sky instantly changed. The dark clouds in the sky started to spin, slowly forming a huge whirlpool. In the center of the whirlpool, ominous light shot out in all directions. A huge sword tip as black as ink slowly extended out from the center of the dark cloud whirlpool. That sword tip is almost as big as a small half of Lonely Mountain's peak. Within it contains the tyrannical power concept of great terror and great slaughter. Just the terrifying bloody aura alone. If ordinary mortals come into contact with it, they will immediately die. The sword tip pointed straight at Lonely Mountain, ready to go. Chapter 96. Even though they were deep inside the mountain, Lin Feng and the others could clearly feel the horrifying power outside the mountain. Kong Nanhua's injuries were all healed. He stood up and stood on the golden sand dune, but his expression was extremely solemn. He muttered to himself, "The crux of the problem is to see who can hold on first." His hands continuously changed the incantation gestures, and the golden sand dune beneath him shook slowly. Countless golden sand floated into the air, scattering a large amount of sand and dust. The sand bypassed Lin Feng, Yu Hongyan, and the others and floated out of the pit. The endless golden sand flew out of Lonely Mountain and landed on the sandy ground at the foot of Lonely Mountain. It blended with the grayish-white fine sand on the sandy ground and glittered with golden light. Witnessing this scene, Lin Feng understood in his heart. These golden sand are all sand that Kong Nanhua has refined using her mana. They are very powerful, but the quantity is ultimately limited. Therefore they are all released to move the normal sand outside. It's like training a large group of officers, and now placing them in the basic troops to train new recruits. Evil, who was outside Lonely Mountain, naturally saw it too. He sneered. Did you also set up a large-scale spell formation here? With that, he pointed the long sword in his hand. The huge tip of the sword in the center of the vortex of dark clouds in the sky rushed out of the clouds with a piercing whistle, and shot towards Lonely Mountain like a natural disaster at the end of the world. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. Evil was also a practical fighter, and he was very experienced in fights of mana. Before Kong Nanhua finished setting up the spell formation, he immediately attacked. Kong Nanhua was not in a hurry. He had already set up the spell formation, and now he just needed to activate it. He changed the incantation gestures again, and the flowing water and the golden sand merged together, turning into a dark yellow stream of water. It flew out of Lonely Mountain and blended into the vast swamp of Ancient Swamp. Boom! There was a loud sound like a flood bursting through a dam. The swamp at the edge of Lonely Mountain's sandy ground was stirred, and it connected with the golden sand that was scattered on the sandy ground. It turned into a mudslide and flooded Lonely Mountain. Eternal River Quicksand Spell Formation. The holy water of the Ganges River surged endlessly. In its calmness, it gave birth to all living things. When it roared, it submerged the world. Kong Nanhua sighed inwardly. My quicksand hidden treasure is just a fragment of the Eternal Sands Quicksand spell. This Eternal Sands Quicksand spell can only exert the power of changing quicksand. If I could exert all the changes of the spell formation, I would be able to break this divine martial immortal slaying spell. The surging silt transformed into monstrous turbid waves that surged upwards. Hung long 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 long. At the same time, the Lonely Mountain standing on the sand, accompanied by continuous roars, was constantly sinking into the ground. The black and yellow mud and quicksand all over the sky actually flew up into the air, forming a huge loop in midair, flowing endlessly, enveloping the Lonely Mountain that was gradually sinking into the ground, leaving only a small hilltop. The long river of time surged without end. It was unstoppable and irreversible. Kong Nanhua's Eternal River Quicksand Formation revealed such an unwavering concept of power. The huge black sword descended from the dark clouds and slashed heavily on the dark yellow Ganges. It was blocked by the mud and sand, unable to move forward. The flowing silt collided with the huge black sword, continuously wearing down the infuriating aura and mana contained within. The attack was blocked. In front of the divine martial immortal slaying spell, Evil's face revealed a smile. Passive defense will never win. You have lost this battle, he shouted loudly, and the divine martial immortal slaying spell's vigor rose by another level. The mana of 3,000 cultivators gathered together, forming a huge black smoke pillar that could be seen clearly by the naked eye. It rose up to the 9 heavens and continuously poured into the dark clouds. The huge black sword that extended from the dark clouds had a more profound and condensed power. The monstrous murderous intention seemed to be much fainter, but it was even more terrifying. This was because the murderous intention was deeper and more reserved. Once it exploded, it would definitely be more violent and brutal. Kong Nanhua, who was in charge of the Eternal River Quicksand spell, was the first to notice the change. The huge black sword's downward momentum was initially withstood, but at this moment, its power suddenly increased. It actually had the tendency of breaking through the Eternal River Quicksand spell. Although the speed was extremely slow, so slow that it was almost undetectable, the huge black sword suddenly started to descend again. Inch by inch, step by step, it seemed to be staggering and difficult to move, but it was actually somewhat unstoppable. No matter how much Kong Nanhua activated the Eternal River Quicksand spell, he could not stop the huge black sword's downward momentum. Kong Nanhua's face was extremely solemn. Although the Eternal River Quicksand spell was continuously washing against the huge black sword, trying to wear down its power, the speed was so slow that it was almost negligible. Compared to the current situation, it was completely inadequate. Although Lin Feng, who was in the belly of the mountain, could not see what was happening outside, he knew that the situation was not good when he saw Kong Nanhua's expression. The Eternal River Quicksand spell borrowed the power of heaven and earth in the great swamp of the ancient region. Logically speaking, it should be invincible. However, firstly, the spell that Kong Nanhua had learned was not complete. Secondly, the divine martial immortal slaying spell was too overbearing. 3,000 cultivators worked together and poured all their mana into Evil's body. Evil's heaven-defying absolute sword's attack power was extremely strong, and it actually had the tendency to break through the Eternal River Quicksand spell. There was always a limit to one's strength. It was not as endless as the power of heaven and earth. If this dragged on, Kong Nanhua would definitely win. However, 3,000 people exerted all their power at the same time. They might be able to break through the Eternal River Quicksand spell before they were exhausted. Lin Feng now understood why Kong Nanhua said that the crux of the problem was to see who would be the first to give up. If the Eternal River Quicksand spell couldn't hold on first, and was broken, then everything would be over. If the Eternal River Quicksand spell could hold on, it would first exhaust the 3,000 cultivators of the Xinwu army outside. Then, they would be fish on the chopping board, ready to be slaughtered by the Eternal River Quicksand spell. Lin Feng frowned in thought. But looking at the current situation, it is clear that Kong Nanhua will give up first. What should I do? Lin Feng's mind was racing. The murderous intent of the huge black sword could no longer be suppressed. Endless sword energy burst out like an invincible astral wind, cutting the mountain that was still exposed on the ground. The hard mountain rocks were as fragile as tofu in front of the sword energy. They were cut into cracks. Inside the mountain, the earth shook and rocks kept falling. There were huge rocks that directly crushed the houses in the village into ruins. Kong Nanhua's face, which had already regained its ruddy luster, turned pale again. Host's disciple Zhu Yi has obtained the Lightning Origin Talisman. Host has completed the random side mission of the Wind Lightning Talisman. Reward, 1 lottery ticket. Lin Feng was dazed for a moment before coming back to his senses. He thought, stinky brats, good job. However, the reward for completing this side mission wasn't a fixed number of exchange points, but a lottery ticket. Turbid wave art, turbid wave art. Lin Feng silently recited a Dao art he lacked, and entered the lottery system. Roulette system, no. Dice system, still no. Lin Feng's breath was stuck in his chest, almost cursing out loud. The attacks of the divine martial immortal execution array became more and more violent. Lin Feng, who was in the deepest part of the mountain, could also feel the violent tremors. The Eternal River Quicksand array was about to collapse. Kong Nanhua pursed his lips stubbornly and didn't say a word. He only supported the array with all his strength. A look of despair flashed across the eyes of Yu Hongyan and the others. It was replaced by unyielding determination. Lin Feng's palms were already sweating. He thought quickly, what should I do now? What should I do? What? Wait. Suddenly raising his head, Lin Feng stared at Kong Nanhua. I can't be wrong. This Kong Nanhua's Dao art, Quicksand Hidden Treasure, should also meet the criteria of Zhe, right? Normally, it would be very difficult to obtain the Dao art of a cultivator in the Golden Elixir period. However, the dangerous situation had created an opportunity for Lin Feng. Crisis. Danger and opportunity always coexisted. Lin Feng took a deep breath and adjusted his appearance. Then he asked calmly, Daoist Kong, the Dao art you cultivate doesn't seem to be complete? Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Lin Feng's sudden interruption made everyone feel awkward. With Yu Hongyan as the leader, they all stared at Lin Feng angrily. The more dangerous the situation was, the calmer Lin Feng was. He still looked calm and composed. He didn't look at Yu Hongyan and the others who were glaring at him. He just stared at Kong Nanhua. Kong Nanhua nodded as she maintained the formation. Lin Feng said, I vaguely saw the complete version of your Quicksand Hidden Treasure somewhere. However, I'm not sure. I wonder if you can lend me your Dao art so that I can compare it? Chapter 97. I wonder if fellow Daoist can let me have a look at your Dao art so that I can compare it. As soon as Lin Feng said this, Kong Nanhua was instantly stunned. Some members of the Society of the Strong Gale finally couldn't help but shout. You bastard, Are you here to take advantage of the situation? Yu Hongyan frowned and didn't speak. The black-clothed man said in a deep voice, "If you really have seen the complete copy, wouldn't it be the same if you copied it out and gave it to Mr. Kong?" Lin Feng ignored them, only calmly looking at Kong Nanhua. Kong Nanhua very seriously observed him for a while. After a while he nodded his head and didn't say anything. A jade slip flew out from his sleeve, directly landing in front of Lin Feng. After handing the jade slip to Lin Feng, Kong Nanhua placed all of his attention on the Eternal River Quicksand Formation, trying his best to resist the pressure of the Divine Martial Immortal Punishment Formation. Lin Feng grabbed the jade slip, his divine sense entering it. Instantly a large section of Dao Technique incantation flowed into his mind. It is the Quicksand Dao Technique that Kong Nanhua cultivates. Please be able to use it. Lin Feng nervously stared at the Dao Technique creation system, the last remaining black hole in the 8 trigrams image, his mind recalling the Quicksand secret technique. It seemed to only be an instant, but Lin Feng felt like he had waited for millions of years. The next moment, white light lit up. In the dark void, 8 balls of white light floated in the air according to the 8 trigrams, silently flashing. Starnet Technique, Ksitigarbha Sutra, Heavenly Wind Scripture, 9 Heavens Thunder Technique, Yellow Springs Nirvana Technique, Art of Akala Book of Taiwa, Quicksand Secret Technique, Heaven, Earth, Wind, Lightning, Water, Fire, Mountain, Lake. The 8 types of Dao techniques have finally all been gathered. Lin Feng breathed a sigh of relief, as if he was about to collapse. Right now the system notification sound falling into his ears was like listening to celestial music. The types and number of basic reference Dao techniques have met the requirements. Beginning fusion now. Dao fusion beginning. Dao fusion successful. Beginning creation of the first chapter of the Heavenly Dao Scripture. 8 trigrams chapter. The first chapter of the Heavenly Dao Virtue Scripture, the 8 trigrams Universal Great Dao Scripture, has been successfully created. The magic power within Lin Feng's body had undergone an earth-shattering change. The many Dao techniques that he had cultivated previously had all disappeared at this moment. All of his magic power had been transformed into a completely new state. Lin Feng's spirit entered a mysterious and wonderful state. There was no light in front of him, only darkness and chaos. Suddenly, there was a voice that seemed to be infinitely far away, coming from an indescribable space and time. It seemed to have passed through infinite space and time, but it also seemed to be right next to Lin Feng's ears, echoing from the depths of his soul. The sound did not seem to be loud, requiring Lin Feng to concentrate all of his attention to be able to hear it, but it also seemed to be so loud that it was deafening, filling the entire space, and shaking Lin Feng's soul to the point where it became unsettled. As the voice rang out, a light source gradually appeared. In the vast and boundless darkness, it seemed incomparably small, but it was incomparably clear, constantly spreading in all directions. The light wasn't dazzling, nor was it hot. It was just the purest and most original light. It gradually dispersed the darkness and chaos, prompting them to evolve continuously. The light seemed extremely small, but Lin Feng felt that the light was far bigger than he had imagined. It was so big that he couldn't describe it, because its size had surpassed anything that Lin Feng knew of by tens of millions, trillions of times. The light suddenly collapsed and turned into countless streams of light. In an instant, it filled the entire space of darkness and chaos. The tens of thousands of streams of light turned into countless scenes. Stars, lightning, flames, oceans, rivers, storms, rain, snow, lava, earth, deserts, trees, flowers, plants, metals, stones. There was no end to it. Everything that Lin Feng knew, everything that he didn't know was there. It was too much for his eyes to take in, and he was dazzled. The primordial chaos transformed into the universe. Then billions of stars were born and destroyed. Everything in the universe was formed. Countless lives were born, and then disappeared. The sea turned into mulberry fields. Everything in the universe was constantly changing. Creation, aging, decay, and then death. Lin Feng was silent for a moment. A gentle smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He mumbled to himself, "The 8 trigrams scripture of the great Tao of heaven. This is the true meaning of creation." He was trying to figure out a new Dao technique. He didn't notice that Yu Hongyan, and the rest were all staring at him. Lin Feng's attention was now completely focused on the system. Congratulations to the host for successfully creating the Sex Foundation Dao technique. Congratulations to the host for completing the second main mission. Special reward for the main mission released. Lin Feng immediately opened the special reward for the main mission. The reason why he worked so hard was to complete the main mission. He was aiming for this special reward. The reward for the first main mission, the Battle Array Magic Puppet, is already so powerful. Your second mission won't be too shabby, right? The special reward this time was a diagram of an array. Yin and Yang life and death array. It describes the beginning of chaos, the creation of Yin and Yang, the creation of all things, and the great Tao of heaven and earth. There are a total of 6 changes. Lin Feng carefully studied the diagram of the array and gradually came up with an idea. One of these 6 changes seems to be able to deal with the divine martial immortal slaying array. Seeing that Lin Feng was daydreaming, Yu Hongyan's almond-shaped eyes widened. She couldn't help but lose her temper. But the mountain suddenly shook violently. Outside Lonely Mountain, the black giant sword pierced down from the clouds in the sky. At this time, the tip of the sword was about to fall on the top of Lonely Mountain. The massive quicksand and silt manifested by the Eternal River Quicksand Array surrounded the black giant sword, almost wrapping it into a big mud ball. But it still couldn't stop the black giant sword's downward momentum. The giant sword, which was almost the same size as the top of Lonely Mountain, pressed down with a terrifying power. It was like a natural disaster. Kong Nanhua sat cross-legged on the sand dune. His face was pale, and his white clothes had been soaked in sweat. His hands continuously changed signs. And then he suddenly spat out a mouthful of essence blood filled with true essence. Kong Nanhua's essence blood sprayed onto the golden sand. The entire Eternal River Quicksand Array instantly perked up, barely blocking the falling sword edge. But Kong Nanhua himself was clearly heavily injured. His expression appeared more and more tired. What's worse is that this method is undoubtedly quenching thirst with poison. It can't last for too long. Yu Hongyan glared fiercely at Lin Feng, then turned around and walked outside. The black-clothed man called out, "Hongyan." Yu Hongyan said in a muffled voice, "Go get ready. Even if the Eternal River Quicksand Array is broken, we have to kill a few more of those Zhou dogs no matter what." Lin Feng was also shocked back to his senses by the power of the divine martial immortal slaying array outside. Looking at Yu Hongyan's flame-like back, he smiled and shook his head. "Your courage is commendable." Yu Hongyan, who had already walked to the edge of the hole, turned around and glared at him. The other members of the Society of the Strong Gale also looked at Lin Feng with vigilance. "Don't be rude." Kong Nanhua, who has been bitterly supporting the Eternal River Quicksand Array all this time and hasn't spoken since the beginning, suddenly spoke. Yu Hongyan hurriedly said, "Mr. Kong he." Kong Nanhua raised his hand to stop her, then looked at Lin Feng, slowly saying, "I'm useless. I can't defeat the opponent's divine martial immortal slaying array. The general leading the Zhou army this time is that butcher Xie. Wherever he goes, he never leaves anyone alive. If he attacks in, not to mention the cultivators in the mountain, even the civilians will be slaughtered." Kong Nanhua's tone was heavy. "I'm not afraid of death, but I can't keep the promise I made to Hong Feng back then." Hearing this, the eyes of Yu Hongyan, who has always been strong, turned slightly red. "Mr. Kong, if it wasn't for you, everyone here would have already died under the butcher knife of that Zhou dog many years ago. We are the ones who have dragged you down. If Big Brother knows in the underworld, he definitely won't blame you. He will only blame himself for harming you." Kong Nanhua waved his hand and stared straight at Lin Feng. "I see that you are as calm as ever, as if you don't care about the 3,000 Zhou army outside and their divine martial immortal slaying array. If you have great magical powers, please save the people here. Kong Nanhua will be eternally grateful." With that, the weak-looking young man in white slowly prostrated on the sand dune. Yu Hongyan and the rest were all shocked, staring blankly at Kong Nanhua and Lin Feng. Lin Feng's expression was calm as he looked at him silently. "You trust me?" Kong Nanhua said word by word. "I trust you." Lin Feng let out a sigh. "I'll help you with this. For those who trust me, I will never disappoint them. With that, Lin Feng waved his hand casually. A map flashing with a mysterious light passed through the belly of the mountain and flew out of Lonely Mountain. Chapter 98. Outside Lonely Mountain, Evil calmly operated the divine martial immortal extermination formation. However, his calm expression revealed a sense of coldness and bloodthirstiness. In the distance, the huge black sword tip rushed straight down and reached the peak of Lonely Mountain. Violent killing intent and death aura filled the surroundings. The entire vicinity of Lonely Mountain seemed to be shrouded by a black aura. Ordinary creatures, once touched by this black aura, would immediately be robbed of their lives and die. Even the Shinwu army cultivators behind Evil showed fear in the face of such a strong death energy. Suddenly, a small light spot flew out from the belly of Lonely Mountain and landed in the air above the peak. Evil's eyes focused. Before he could react, the light spot rapidly expanded. Countless rays of light intertwined in the sky with a strange pattern. It was a mysterious formation with an extremely large area. Not only did it exceed the range of Lonely Mountain, but it also enveloped the nearby sandy land and expanded to a large swamp. The 3,000 cultivators of the Shinwu army couldn't help but look up. Above their heads, the huge formation enveloped an area of 100 miles. The formation flashed in slowly. It fell to the ground as if it had sunk into the ground and disappeared in a flash. A cultivator touched his body. The rays of light that formed the formation just passed through his body and fell to the ground under his feet. But he didn't feel anything. If it weren't for the 3,000 people witnessing it, they would have thought it was an illusion. The formation was like a fleeting glimpse, appearing in a hurry and then disappearing in a hurry, as if it had never existed. Evil sneered in front of the divine martial immortal extermination formation. You only know how to play these little tricks? Then go to hell. The army has locked the nearby space. Whether it's the remnants of Xue Feng or the young Taoists from before, they can't run out of the range of this mountain. All of you must die. Evil drew his sword and his magic power increased again. The rocks on the peak of Lonely Mountain had been cut into countless cracks by the sharp sword energy. At this moment, the tip of the black sword instantly shattered. The entire peak was on the verge of collapse. Countless sands surrounded the black sword energy, still trying to wear down the power of the giant sword and slow down its falling momentum. But no matter how one looked at it, it seemed so powerless and extremely futile. In the belly of Lonely Mountain, Yu Hongyan and the others all looked at Lin Feng with incomparable disappointment. Some people could not bear the huge pressure and roared at Lin Feng. Little tricks like camouflage, is this all you've got? The man in black stopped him, glanced at Kong Nanhua, and then looked at Lin Feng. Mr. Kong has really misjudged you. Since you don't have the ability, why bother putting on airs? Yu Hongyan waved his hand in frustration. It's useless to talk about that now. Let's go. How can we just sit here and wait for death? Lin Feng turned a deaf ear to this. Instead, he closed his eyes leisurely and calculated with his fingers. He is waiting. Outside the lone mountain, Evil was also waiting. He was waiting for the moment when his sword momentum reached its peak. The magic power of the 3,000 Shinwu army cultivators was also pushed to the extreme. Such a huge amount of magic power gathered together, and under Evil's guidance, it continuously fused into the dark clouds in the sky, where it was turned into a murderous sword energy. Go against the heavens and destroy all living beings. Evil's eyes brightened. He flew into the sky and flew straight into the dark clouds where the sword energy came from, disappearing. But as Evil himself entered the dark clouds, the murderous intent of the black sword energy rose to another level. Countless cracks appeared on the black sword energy, densely packed like a spider web. The cracks were as red as blood, and the murderous intent was earth-shattering. The sword energy didn't seem to be collapsing after these cracks appeared. Instead, it became fiercer and more condensed. Evil's murderous voice came from the clouds. Now! Before he could finish speaking, the pitch-black energy sword that was covered in blood suddenly shone with a red light. In the next moment, the sand surrounding the sword energy shattered. The Eternal River quicksand formation was broken. The peak of Lonely Mountain collapsed. The upper half of the mountain turned into countless gravel and tumbled down. Inside the mountain, it was as if the sky was falling and the mountains were shaking. The apocalypse was coming. Yu Hongyan and the others turned pale with fright, or their faces turned ashen. At this moment Lin Feng's eyes suddenly opened. Now, the murderous intent of the enemy had reached its peak. This was the moment. Lin Feng placed his hands in front of his chest and changed his hand seals continuously. One command after another was sent to the well-prepared Yin and Yang Life and Death Formation. Yin and Yang Life and Death Formation, activate. 6 Tao of Life and Death, Change of Life and Death, activate. The giant array that had disappeared suddenly lit up at this moment. Endless rays of light shot into the sky, illuminating everyone's shocked faces. If one looked down from a very high place in the sky, one could see a giant magic circle lit up on the ground with Lonely Mountain as the center. Countless lines of light outlined mysterious patterns one after another. These patterns gathered together to form a giant black and white pattern that covered 100 miles around Lonely Mountain. The giant formation slowly rose up and blocked the falling black blood greatsword in midair. Something strange happened. In the giant formation, the black and white poles slowly rotated and devoured the black sword that fell on it. The murderous sword energy that could split the sky and the earth disappeared as soon as it fell into the black and white poles. There was no earth-shattering collision. Evil's heaven-defying sword attack using the divine martial immortal slaying formation, formed by 3,000 cultivators, disappeared silently in the giant formation. What is that? Someone in the Xinwu army formation exclaimed, and pointed to the ground in front of them. The others ignored him. It wasn't that they didn't hear him, but that everyone was stunned by the scene in front of them. Within the range of the giant spell formation's radiance, the ground that was originally sand and swamp was actually covered by a patch of green. Countless fresh green grasses and beautiful flowers sprouted from the mud and sand, turning this place into a sea of flowers and plants. Exuberant vitality, exuberant greenery, the strong aura of life formed a sharp contrast with the murderous aura of death that was still surging in the sky. It was as if they were two completely opposite worlds. The world of life and death, and the dividing line between the two worlds was the giant formation in the sky. This formation continuously transformed the murderous aura of death released by evil into aura of life. The stronger the opponent's aura of death, the more powerful the formation will be. Lonely Mountain had already completely split open. The people in the belly of the mountain stared blankly at the scene in the sky. Countless people knelt on the ground, thanking the gods for their protection. Yu Hongyan and the others looked at Lin Feng in shock, all speechless. Lin Feng's voice came from the giant formation. His tone was calm, clearly passing into the ears of everyone present. Whether it's the Xinwu army or the Society of the Strong Gale, they could all clearly hear his voice. I originally didn't want to kill too much in the matters between the two of you. For the cultivators of the Society of the Strong Gale, the people in the mountain are your family, but the 3,000 Xinwu army outside the mountain also have family? But evil, you're extremely vicious and ruthless. You don't leave any leeway. You're forcing me to make a move. The dark clouds in the sky were already about to disperse, revealing evil's incomparably gloomy face. His cold face revealed a manic and bloodthirsty expression for the first time. Deceiving brat. Before I killed you until you pissed your pants in terror, now you still dare to show your face? I'll tear you to pieces. Let's see if you still dare to be arrogant. Evil let out a shrill howl. His sword force once again strengthened. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't do anything to the formation of life and death. On the contrary, the more he exerted force, the stronger the formation's power became. The destructive power of the heaven-defying absolute sword was endlessly converted into life force. Lin Feng smiled indifferently. Since you're seeking death, I'll fulfill your wish. The spell sign of his hands changed again. 6 paths of life and death, change of heaven and earth begin. The life force within the formation all merged into the formation. The formation shone brightly. An enormous power capable of toppling the heavens and earth erupted. The 3,000 Xinwu army cultivators within the formation felt the entire space in front of them turn upside down. The sky was collapsing nonstop. The sky was falling straight down towards their heads. The ground under their feet was constantly shaking. Sand and sand rolled up, covering the sky and covering the sun, wanting to completely bury them. The apocalypse-like change of heaven and earth made the entire Shinwu Immortal Punishment Formation collapse in an instant. The 3,000 cultivators all covered their heads and scurried away like rats. But how could they escape the attack of the formation's power? The sky that used to be lofty and distant, is overturning. The earth that used to bear everything, is roaring. The sky is overturning, no one can stop it. 3,000 people, 3,000 cultivators, all buried in the vast swamp. Evil's eyes were blood red as he roared. The mana he gathered earlier had yet to dissipate, converging into an extremely violent and bloody red light on the tip of his sword, pointing straight at the center of the yin-yang life and death formation. As if the Milky Way was pouring down, a dark blood-red sword ray shot out. Lin Feng took a step forward. His body already merged into the yin-yang life and death formation, and a cold voice came from the formation. Those who kill will always be killed. 6 paths of life and death, change of life and death, turn. The black and white poles of the formation reversed, and the massive amount of life force was turned into a monstrous deathly aura, dyeing the entire sky black. The mountain-like tip of the black sword appeared again, but this time, it poked its head out of Lin Feng's yin-yang life and death formation. Evil's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as he watched the black sword whizzing towards him. The red sword ray clashed with the black sword in midair. There was only one ending for it. Break. The sky was filled with red light, illuminating Evil's despairing face. The black sword pierced towards Evil in the sky. The huge tip of the sword was many times bigger than Evil's body, but it accurately stabbed into Evil's body. All the power, without a single bit of waste, exploded on Evil's body. Endless black light exploded in the sky, exploding and exploding again. General Evil, who was bloodthirsty and cruel, who loved to listen to the people he killed praise him before they died. There was only one ending for him: death. Chapter 99. The black greatsword the size of a small mountain charged straight towards the horizon, as if it wants to split the sky. The moment Evil's body came into contact with the blade, it shattered into dust. Countless rays of black light exploded in the sky, scattering in all directions like a meteor shower. All of the cultivators of the Society of the Strong Gale raised their heads and stared blankly at the sky above their heads. There, the greatsword tore apart the thick clouds in the sky. A touch of warm sunlight shone down, falling on everyone's body. God knows how many days and months it's been since they've seen sunlight in this miasma-filled swamp of the ancient region. The children let out waves of cheers, but the adults felt their noses tingle, having the urge to cry. Yu Hongyan and the others also looked at the sky above their heads in shock. It's over just like this. Just a moment ago, the eternal river quicksand formation collapsed. The summit of Lonely Mountain collapsed. The people in the belly of the mountain were all exposed to the butcher knife of the enemy, and it looked like they were about to be slaughtered. But at this moment, 3,000 cultivators, the divine martial immortal slaying formation, General Evil, were destroyed just like this? Yu Hongyan was terrified, looking at Lin Feng, who put away the formation map and descended from the sky. The red-haired girl stood there blankly, falling into a state of absent-mindedness. Those 2 red eyebrows that are forever raised like thin killing swords also seemed a lot calmer because of her absent-mindedness. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent, his white clothes untainted by even a speck of dust. The cultivators of the Society of the Strong Gale looked at each other with an awkward expression, looking at Lin Feng speechlessly. Yu Hongyan came back to her senses. Her expression was also extremely complicated, but she didn't hesitate much, directly bowing all the way towards Lin Feng, making a proper bow. Senior has remarkable abilities turning the tide. Yu Hongyan will never forget the favor of lending a helping hand. Before I was rude to Senior, I'm willing to let Senior punish me. The black-clothed man also had an ashamed expression, cupping his hands towards Lin Feng, saying sincerely, I was rude before, I hope Senior can forgive me. The face of the cultivator of the Society of the Strong Gale who first criticized Lin Feng, was flushed red. It was me who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and offended Senior. I hope you can forgive me. The members of the Society of the Strong Gale all came up to salute Lin Feng, either apologizing or thanking him. Lin Feng only smiled faintly and did not say anything. It was as if he didn't care about their previous questioning and offense, or their current apologies and thanks. If it was before, in the eyes of Yu Hongyan and the others, they would naturally feel that Lin Feng was arrogant. But now, all of them felt ashamed of themselves. If Lin Feng was angry and wanted to bicker with them, they would not be so nervous. At this moment, the gazes of the cultivators of the Society of the Strong Gale no longer had any contempt or suspicion. They were completely happy to submit. Within the gratitude, there was even a hint of faint fear mixed in. Just now, Lin Feng had reversed life and death with just a raise of his hand. The earth-shattering power was too shocking. Even Lin Feng himself, although he looked calm on the surface, his heart was in turmoil. This is the power of the yin and yang life and death formation? This is just the tip of the iceberg, borrowing the power of heaven and earth. Even though it can't be moved and the setup is complicated, the power of the formation is definitely the strongest among spells of the same level. Any sect will have a protective formation to protect the foundation of their sect. Taishu Temple has the Great Void Yin and Yang formation. Great Thunder Temple has the Vairocana formation. Mount Shu Sword Sect has the Great Immortal Heaven Manifestation Sword formation. These protective formations are all the foundation of the sect. On that day, the Hengyu sect's protective formation was broken by the Xian Dao sect's Pubizi, because the difference in cultivation between the Hengyu sect's Golden Elixir period cultivator and the Yuanying stage Old Monster Pubizi was too great. If the Hengyu sect also had a Yuanying stage cultivator in charge, Pubizi definitely wouldn't have the guts to attack their sect. In a battle between cultivators of the same level, only formations of the same power can resist formations. And the formation diagram of this yin and yang life and death formation is the sect protection formation that the system rewarded to him after combining with the Dao technique foundation of Lin Feng's self-created sect. Lin Feng only has the diagram of the formation. First, he doesn't have enough cultivation, and second, he doesn't have the materials needed to set up the formation. But with the formation's life and death transformation, he was able to fight against evil's divine martial immortal slaying formation. He dissolved the killing sword aura and turned it into the power of his own formation. Then, he used this momentum to unleash a heaven and earth transformation, burying 3,000 soldiers of the Xinwu army and reversing the change of life and death. The power of life was converted into the power of annihilation, directly killing General Xia without leaving a corpse. Even the life and death transformation and the heaven and earth transformation today are far from being able to display their true power. Lin Feng thought to himself, in the future when my own cultivation increases, I'll prepare all the materials needed to set up the formation. How amazing will this yin and yang life and death formation be? I'm afraid it can really open up a place and control the creation and destruction of all things, right? Thinking up to here, Lin Feng couldn't help but be fascinated. The main quests issued by the system are indeed a scam, but the special rewards of the main quests are really more awesome than the previous one. It can be said to be high risk and high reward. For the first time in history, Lin Feng was even somewhat looking forward to the new main quest. After entering the system, the new main quest has indeed been issued. Main Quest 1. To find a suitable blessed land in Grotto Heaven, and officially establish the sect. Quest description: the path of cultivation, law, land, wealth, and companions. If a sect wants to develop and strengthen, other than the Dao techniques belonging to the sect, it also needs a blessed land in Grotto Heaven that is suitable for cultivation. Only then can it attract the talents of the world to join and establish a foundation for generations to come. Quest time limit: 3 years. If the quest is not completed within the time limit, the host will be directly killed. Lin Feng looked at the quest content and pondered. Should I officially find a place to settle down? He thought of the deal he made with that witch Long Yi before. Long Yi provided him with information about a cave abode, saying that it hasn't been occupied yet. Who knows if it's true? While Lin Feng was pondering, he saw Kong Nanhua walk down from the sand dune, arriving in front of him. Kong Nanhua's expression was calm, arriving in front of Lin Feng and bowing. Thank you for lending a helping hand. Kong Nanhua can't thank you enough. Lin Feng said with a slight smile. The strong are helped by the heavens, you don't need to take it to heart. Besides, I didn't make a move to take advantage of someone's precarious situation and demand repayment. Kong Nanhua shook his head and didn't say anything. He promised his old friend that even if he had to fight to the death, he definitely wouldn't shrink back. So if it wasn't for Lin Feng making a move today, not to mention the people of the Society of the Strong Gale, even Kong Nanhua himself would have fallen under the divine martial immortal punishing formation. Kong Nanhua looked at the people of the Society of the Strong Gale, sighing. I once promised Hong Feng to take care of you guys. But my mana isn't high enough, and it's hard to protect you guys. This time if it wasn't for this fellow Taoist saving me, even my own life would have been lost. Yu Hongyan walked out of the crowd, walking to Kong Nanhua's side, lowering his head and saying, Thank you for your care these years. Hongyan thanks Mr. Kong on behalf of everyone. You're not a member of our Society of the Strong Gale to begin with. Just for a promise from Big Brother you've protected us until now. All of us are deeply grateful. Yu Hongyan said with deep emotion. It's us who were too selfish. Relying on your protection we wantonly operated within the borders of the Great Zhou dynasty. Kong Nanhua's expression was calm as he shook his head, not saying anything. Lin Feng secretly nodded after hearing this. Yu Hongyan and the others were indeed a bit too arrogant. With their strength, it was too high profile for them to insist on operating within the borders of the Great Zhou dynasty. In the end, the Great Zhou dynasty was serious this time, and almost wiped them all out. If they retreated into the borders of other dynasties, how could the Great Zhou dynasty encircle and annihilate them so easily? The black-clothed man's expression changed slightly when he heard this. Hongyan, don't tell me you. Yu Hongyan calmly nodded his head. I've decided, we'll temporarily withdraw from the borders of the Great Zhou dynasty, accumulate strength, increase our cultivation level. In the future when we have enough strength we'll make a comeback. The black-clothed man glanced at Kong Nanhua, opening his mouth wanting to say something, but in the end he didn't make a sound. Kong Nanhua slightly frowned. Entering the borders of other dynasties, it's very easy for you to lose your independence. Yu Hongyan faintly smiled, his two crimson eyebrows raised up. That will depend on whether or not we work hard. There are no cowards in the people of Snowgale. Hearing this, Kong Nanhua's face revealed a smile of approval. Hongyan, you're very good. If the Red Wind Spring knows of your appearance today, he'll definitely be very happy. He turned his head to look at Lin Feng, saying very seriously, Your grace today is equivalent to giving me a new lease on life. It's just a pity that I'm already carrying a promise. Before I've fulfilled the previous promise, I really don't dare to make another promise lightly. I can only say that when we meet again in the future, as long as you have an order, Kong Nanhua won't dare to disobey. Lin Feng stared at Kong Nanhua's eyes for a moment, lightly laughing. Don't mention following or dispatching again. I'll still say the same thing. If we're fated to meet again in the future, I'm willing to sit down and debate with you. Lin Feng turned his head to look at Yu Hongyan and the others, smiling, saying, You guys take care of yourselves. The cultivators of the Society of the Strong Gale with Yu Hongyan in the lead bowed together, respectfully saying, We will follow seniors' teachings. Lin Feng waved the black cloud flag, turning into a streak of black light, and instantly disappearing into the distance. After Lin Feng left, Kong Nanhua began to meditate and adjust his breathing. Yu Hongyan and the others went out to calm the villagers and began to arrange for the evacuation. The black-clothed man silently walked to a place where no one was paying attention and crushed a sound transmission crystal. What happened? The crystal shard emitted white light. A man's voice came from within the white light. Chapter 100. What happened? The crystal shard emitted a white light, and a man's voice came from the white light. The black-robed man reported everything that happened before. After a moment of silence, the other said, This time is indeed very dangerous. It is good that you leave the Great Zhou country first. After a pause, he said, the sect will soon send disciples to your place to increase your strength. At the same time, it will also be a training for the disciples. The scar on the black-robed man's face trembled, and he sighed in his heart. This way, the enemy's infiltration of them would be even more powerful. However, he had no room to refuse, and could only respectfully reply, we will be prepared on our side. After a the other seemingly casually asked, is there any news of Zhu Yi who I ordered you to capture last time? The black-robed man answered, I only heard that he appeared near the Great Qin dynasty's Chuzhou city, but his current whereabouts cannot be confirmed. Okay, I understand. You should leave as soon as possible. The other side didn't say anything else and cut off the connection. However, the black-robed man could still faintly hear the other side seemingly talking to himself. A white-robed young Taoist with feathered clothes and a star crown? This person has been very active recently. Why haven't I heard of this person before? Although he knew that the other side couldn't see him, the black-robed man still lowered his head and didn't dare to make the slightest sound. Because that was a disciple of the number one sacred ground in the world, the Taishi Temple. To him this was an absolute monster. Lin Feng rode on the black cloud flag and flew in the air, splitting off a strand of consciousness to enter the internal space of the black cloud flag. Looking at Dao Jiqiang, who was still in a daze, he asked, okay, what are your plans now? Dao Jiqiang came back to his senses and looked at Lin Feng with an extremely complicated gaze. He softly sighed. I can't go back to the Shimu army. My comrades were all annihilated, and I'm the only one left alive. If I go back, my fate will be extremely miserable. Lin Feng lightly glanced at him. I let you go. What do you plan to do? Thank you for trusting me. Dao Jiqiang said. I plan to go to the Great Qin dynasty and try my luck to see if I can enter a large sect to cultivate and increase my strength. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. Oh, Dao Jiqiang calmly said. I joined the Shinwu army because there are large amounts of cultivation resources and arts that can increase my power. His expression was resolute. I need strength, great strength. Lin Feng waved his sleeve. Since that's the case, I wish you good luck. Dao Jiqiang knew nothing about him, and Lin Feng wasn't worried that releasing Dao Jiqiang would expose any secrets. After exiting the black cloud flag, Dao Jiqiang bowed to Lin Feng and said, Thank you, Dao Zhang, for not killing me. After saying that, he did not hesitate and turned to leave. Lin Feng looked at his back and shook his head with a smile. This was also a man with a story. I have to go as soon as possible. For Lin Feng, the most important thing right now was to meet up with Xiao Yan's group as soon as possible. He headed west and left the archaic swamp. When he saw Xiao Yan's group again, it was already a month later. Master! The little guy jumped over as soon as they met. Lin Feng laughed and patted his head. Stinking brat, you didn't cause trouble for your two senior brothers, did you? Xiao Budian's big black eyes swiveled around and said while grinning, Of course not. Xiao Yan behind him scolded with a smile. Don't give me that, tell Master all the good things you did. While smiling, he walked over with Zhu Yi and bowed to Lin Feng. Disciple greets Master. Zhu Yi smiled and took out a palm-sized stone talisman. Master, the three of us did not disappoint and successfully brought back the lightning essence talisman. Lin Feng faintly smiled and thought to himself, Of course I know you guys completed the task. He took the lightning essence talisman and saw that it was similar to the flowing wind talisman. The material and size were the same, but the talisman carved on the stone talisman looked like a lightning symbol, which was different from the flowing wind talisman. Lin Feng smiled and looked at the little guy. The little guy chuckled and took out the flowing wind talisman and handed it to Lin Feng. These two talismans looked ordinary on their own, and the spiritual power they contained was extremely thin. However, when the two talismans combined, Lin Feng immediately felt a huge change. Wind and lightning were born and complemented each other. There was actually a mysterious power that was constantly growing and growing between the talismans at a shocking speed. This thing really can't be judged by its appearance. It looks ordinary, but it's definitely a treasure. Lin Feng thought to himself. His eyes glanced at Xiao Yan's group, and he suddenly felt something strange. After taking a closer look, Lin Feng was suddenly speechless. Before they parted, the little guy's cultivation was at Qi Disciple level 10, Xiao Yan was at Qi Disciple level 9, and Zhu Yi had just reached Qi Disciple level 7. In just a short 2 to 3 months, the little guy had already broken through to Qi Disciple level 12. Xiao Yan was at the peak of Qi Disciple level 11, and could immediately break through to Qi Disciple level 12. The most terrifying was Zhu Yi. This guy had also reached Qi Disciple level 11. What kind of joke was this? Lin Feng suddenly felt a lot of pressure. Being surrounded by such a group of monsters, how could Wang Lin be the only one who felt pressure? You guys are the chosen ones. Your cultivation speed is really like taking drugs. Lin Feng secretly wiped his cold sweat and made up his mind. Damn! Now that I have a self-created Dao technique, I must go into seclusion this time. I must at least cultivate to the foundation establishment stage. Looking at the 3 disciples in front of him, Lin Feng only felt a surging king's tyrannical aura multiply by 3. It was constantly leaking out. Looking at the faintly disappointed Wang Lin beside him, Lin Feng's mouth slightly twitched. Why are you disappointed? Contestants like you who exert strength in the latter stages are the scariest, aren't they? Lin Feng's gaze turned to Zhu Yi. The other 2 were fine, but this kid's speed was a bit too fast, wasn't it? With this look, Lin Feng suddenly saw something. His face revealed an unfathomable smile. Zhu Yi, it seems like you have gained a lot from this trip. Zhu Yi nodded. I was just about to report to Master. After saying that, he took out a long metal artifact. Lin Feng looked carefully, and saw that it was an artifact carved in the shape of a long snake. The snake's winding body was vivid and lifelike, and there were 2 crimson snake eyes on its head, emitting a demonic light. Zhu Yi explained. This thing is called God-Destroying Snake. It is an artifact. It can release golden light to attack the opponent's body, destroying the opponent's divine soul and physical body from the inside, making it impossible for the opponent to effectively defend themselves. During this trip to the Sea of Wind and Thunder, the 3 of us found the Thunder Origin Talisman. When we were about to return, we accidentally encountered a cultivator who was going through a tribulation. In the end, he failed and died, but we obtained a part of his magic power essence, causing our cultivation to improve by leaps and bounds. Apart from that, there's also this God of Destruction snake magic tool, and a spell called Dark Mandala Array. As Zhu Yi spoke, he took out a jade slip and handed it to Lin Feng, a confused expression on his face. It is very strange. Whether it is refining the artifact or practicing the spell, I have been very successful, but when I let eldest senior brother and little junior brother try, they were unable to grasp the main points. Lin Feng took the jade slip with a strange expression, but in fact, his heart was already racing. 10 points of fortune, it really is not an exaggeration. Lin Feng shook his head with a wry smile, but on the surface he was calm and said, Don't worry, everyone has their own fate. Zhu Yi nodded, then said hesitantly, Also, the 3 of us may have gotten into some trouble. After that cultivator failed to pass the tribulation, there were people who coveted his inheritance, so we had a conflict with them. Zhu Yi paused, then continued. During the conflict, we killed 2 of them. Xiao Yan patted Tiny Tot's head. If it wasn't for this kid's dirty hands, we would have taken the things and directly run away. Tiny Tot stuck out his tongue. How would I know that the other party was hiding in such a damned place? I could actually blow them up with a random lightning bolt. Lin Feng's expression did not change, but he sighed in his heart. Sure enough, as soon as they left the novice village, there would be countless monsters crying and shouting and pouncing on these kids, begging for abuse and education. The path of monsters was to cut through thorns and thorns. It was to shine brightly. It was to trample on all the cannon fodder that came to their door to be slapped. After calming down, Lin Feng asked, Do you know who the other party is? Xiao Yan nodded. They said that they are from the Wind God sect. Lin Feng's expression was slightly strange, but it disappeared in a flash. He smiled and shook his head. Don't worry about it. You guys remember, We won't take the initiative to cause trouble, but if someone dares to bully our own people, go all out and beat them up. Xiao Yan and the other two, as well as the silent Wang Lin, heard this. Their spirits were roused. They bowed and said, "We will solemnly obey Master's orders." Tiny Tot's eyes turned, and he suddenly smiled. "Master, when we came back this time, we passed by a valley. There was a heavenly gold thunder snake there. It was about to shed its skin. Do you think we should kill it?" Lin Feng looked at his little disciple with a smile that wasn't a smile, who looked cute, but had actually already revealed some potential of being thick-skinned and black-hearted. "Brat, thinking about your baptism?" Tiny Tot embarrassedly scratched the back of his head and said with a flattering smile, "Master, I will be 5 soon." Lin Feng smiled and patted his little head. "In a few days we will go. Don't worry, Master has not forgotten your baptism." Before that, Lin Feng had to hurry up and let himself reach the foundation establishment stage. Chapter 101. It's still not working. It's not a problem of not having enough magic power. Lin Feng stopped meditating and stood up. His brows furrowed into a knot. He had been working hard for nearly a month, but he still couldn't open up his sea of qi and establish his Tao foundation. Lin Feng carefully analyzed the actual situation and found that it wasn't that his magic power wasn't strong enough. It was that he hadn't completely understood the concepts and principles contained in the 8 trigrams of the Great Way of Heaven. Even though Lin Feng created this Taoist scripture that was formed after merging the 8 Taoist techniques, the profoundness within still needed Lin Feng to carefully analyze. Feeling a little irritated, Lin Feng didn't dare to force his way through. He stopped cultivating and stood up to take a walk nearby to relax his nerves. Deep in the mountains, Lin Feng walked unhurriedly beside a small pond. He looked at his reflection in the water and silently thought about the problems he had encountered in the process of cultivating. A small insect flew up from the surface of the water. Lin Feng recognized that it was a mayfly, a small insect that only had a few days of life. Lin Feng squatted beside the pond and looked at the flying mayfly in a daze. It only has a few days of life at most. Is there any meaning to such a life? As a young man who was half ordinary and half stupid, Lin Feng rarely thought about such artistic things. However, these days, his mind was filled with the 8 trigrams of the Great Way of Heaven. He was constantly thinking about the principles of creation and death of all things revealed in it. After a long time, Lin Feng's mind suddenly had a layer of understanding. A human can live for 100 years. A mayfly can live for a few days. They all grow old and die. In the end, they all have to die. There's no difference. A human's life has meaning, so does a mayfly. It's just that humans don't necessarily understand mayflies. Lin Feng raised his head and looked at the sky above him. He slowly turned his neck and looked at the surrounding mountains and plants. He looked at the pond in front of him. Finally, his gaze fell on the short-lived little insect. For 3 whole days, Lin Feng sat motionlessly beside the pond, observing the mayfly's birth, growth, and eventual aging and death. He observed the process of a life being born, aging, getting sick, and dying. After another mayfly died, Lin Feng stood up with a whoosh, closing his eyes. Mayflies, humans, all living things in this world, even this entire world, they all have to go through this process of creation, aging, collapse, and finally perish, returning to nothingness. After destruction, everything returns to nothingness, and then is created once again from the chaos of nothingness. When the heavens and the earth are first created, the primordial world appears, and then all living things are born. As time passes, they grow and age, and finally decay until they are completely destroyed and no longer exist. Birth, aging, sickness, and death. This is life. Lin Feng slowly opened his eyes. Countless fragmented images flashed through his pupils. Countless scenes. Heavenly winds, earthly fires, pavilions, the sun and moon, mountains and rivers, peddlers, dragons, elephants, tigers, and leopards. Thousands of things were constantly being born and destroyed. Success, destruction, and emptiness. This is fate. Lin Feng's mind was like a spring breeze, and he was at peace. He wholeheartedly felt the changes in his body and the communication between heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, it was as if thousands of years had passed. Lin Feng's eyes suddenly widened, and an endless divine light burst out. Boom! Between heaven and earth, a majestic will connected the heavens and the earth, and carried the chi of heaven and earth. Lin Feng felt the magic power in his body tremble, and he was reborn. It was an earth-shattering change. For cultivators who had not broken through the 12th floor, their magic power would accumulate in their acupoints like stagnant water. For cultivators who had broken through the 12th floor, their magic power would flow like a river. For cultivators who had established their Tao foundation, their magic power would carry the weight of heaven and earth, and it would be as vast as the ocean. At this moment, Lin Feng not only understood the true meaning of the 8 trigrams scripture of the Great Tao, but also touched upon the concept of the beginning of chaos and the operation of the heavenly Tao. Foundation establishment stage done. Congratulations to host for reaching the foundation establishment stage. Congratulations to host for comprehending the true meaning of the first chapter of the 8 trigrams scripture of the Great Tao. Conditions met. System upgrading. Entering the second stage. When Lin Feng heard a series of notifications, he couldn't help but smile. I hope this upgrade is good enough. System upgrade complete. Lin Feng first opened the exchange system, and when he saw the items inside, his eyes widened. Good heavens, there are pills that can directly increase cultivation? 33 Heavens Fortune Immortal Pill. A unique item of the system. It did not exist in the Great Heaven Primordial World. If cultivators below the primordial spirit stage consume it, they will directly increase by a small stage, and the chances of breaking through to the next stage will increase. A person can only consume it once in their lifetime, and it will be ineffective the second time. Lin Feng's saliva flowed out of his mouth, but when he looked at the exchange price, he was instantly defeated. Fuck, all his wealth added up was not even a fraction of it. However, Lin Feng wasn't discouraged. According to his experience, there was a certain chance of obtaining something from the exchange system. Other than the 33 Heavens Fortune Immortal Pill, there was also the Demon Breaking Pill that could suppress inner demons, the Crazy Demon Pill that could greatly increase one's strength for a short period of time, and the Shadow Clone Pill that could create a clone with half of one's cultivation. There were all sorts of good items, and Lin Feng couldn't take it all in. Although he didn't have enough points to exchange, when Xiao Yan and the others completed the Wind and Thunder Talisman side mission, the system had rewarded Lin Feng with a chance at the lottery. Lin Feng immediately entered the lottery system, and when he saw the scene in front of him, he couldn't help but be stunned. The lottery system originally had 3 images. One was a die, which represented the dice lottery system, and the other was a roulette, which represented the roulette lottery system. Other than that, there was another item that was blocked by a gray fog, and he couldn't choose it. The system probably hadn't been opened yet. But after the system upgrade, the fog had dissipated. Lin Feng looked carefully, and it was a lot pot. He clicked to enter. This was a lottery system. After reading the rules carefully, Lin Feng gritted his teeth. The lottery system had a total of 4 types of lots for drawing: red lot, white lot, long lot, and short lot. Before drawing lots, he could first choose an item he wanted from the exchange system, then choose an item from his current items, and give it to the system as a bargaining chip. Finally, he would draw lots. If he drew the red lot, it was a special prize, and he could directly get the item he wanted from the exchange system. It was equivalent to using his bargaining chip to exchange for the item, even if the original price of the item was tens of thousands of points. If he drew the white lot, he wouldn't get anything, and the item he provided to the system as a bargaining chip would be returned as it was, which was equivalent to wasting a lottery chance. If he drew the long lot, it was a random prize, and the bargaining chip item wouldn't be returned. He would randomly draw an item and give it to Lin Feng, but there was no guarantee whether the item was good or bad. The worst was the short lot. Not only would he not get anything, but the bargaining chip item wouldn't be returned either, and he would suffer a double loss. 30 lots would appear in the lot pot at once. Before drawing, all the lots would look the same. Only after drawing would he know whether it was a red lot, a white lot, a long lot, or a short lot. According to the system's explanation, the more expensive the bargaining chip was, the higher the probability of a red lot and a long lot. There could be a maximum of 6 red lots, a 20% chance. On the other hand, the cheaper the bargaining chip, the higher the probability of a white lot and a short lot, and the lower the probability of a red lot. The lowest was only 1, a little over 3% chance. In addition, any item that came from the system couldn't be used as a bargaining chip. Lin Feng's mind immediately became active. If it's not from the system, what can I use as a bargaining chip? Black Cloud Flag? No, I'll have to rely on this thing to travel. The ability to teleport is also very useful. Wind Thunder Talisman? Although the Flowing Wind Talisman came from the system, the Thunder Origin Talisman wasn't. However, this thing was still very useful, and could even lay the foundation of the sect. He was a little reluctant to use it. Universe Mirror? This thing could be used as a radar, and intelligence gathering was very important, but it wasn't suitable. Lin Feng thought for a moment, and his eyes lit up. This thing should have some weight, right? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.